This is Atomic Shinobi, and today I'm going to narrate first part of What If Naruto Save Avatar Korra and have a harem. If you enjoy this video, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. And for more exclusive and spicy content, follow me on Patreon. Link is in the description below. And now, wasting no more time, let's start the story.
A teenage boy wearing black pants, black combat boots, imagine black Carhartt boots, a gray tank top, black fingerless driving gloves, and a black unzipped jacket with sleeves rolled up to his elbows was seen walking down the street. He had unruly blonde spiky hair, 6 whisker marks, 3 on each cheek, tan skin, and cerulean eyes. The blonde teen was walking down the street while whistling a tune and carrying a big duffel bag full of stuff over his shoulder. The blonde boy got a smirk in his head when he saw a man who appeared to be a high roller. Somehow, as the blonde passed the man, cash flew from his pocket and fell directly into the blonde's hand. The blonde smiled and held the cash up to his face. The blonde put the money in his pocket and kept walking, saying, "Sucker." The blonde saw a wanted poster featuring his photo as he was strolling down the street. Wanted. Naruto the Blonde Devil was listed as the cash reward, with 10,000 yuan. The blonde teen now known as Naruto took down the poster and tore it up, saying, "I guess that stuff with the triads got me noticed, but come on, I'm worth way more than that." He thought it was a waste to tear up such a handsome face, especially when it was his, but it's always best to keep a low profile. Naruto threw the pieces of paper to the ground and said, "Besides, all I did was destroy a truck with nobody inside or around the area, so why try and convict me for that?" When Naruto turned around, he saw a slender man with unclean black hair, loose, fitting pants, and an open vest. "You know littering is against the law." Naruto said coolly, "Yao, what's up?" Not pleased to see the blonde outlaw, Yao said, "You stole from us." Clutching his fingernails to check for dirt, Naruto smirked and said, "I figured you guys wouldn't mind me covering the finder's fee, considering I did most of the work." Yao yelled, "You never turn against a triad. Haven't your parents taught you that?" "Not really. I ran away from home at a young age," Naruto replied. Yao exclaimed, "Well, someone ought to have taught you that." Naruto, tired of staring at Yao's exposed torso, said, "Yao, a little piece of advice. Criminals shouldn't yell out in the open where cops can be at any time. Plus, cover yourself dude, cause your body is gross." "Well, here's some advice for you. Never mess with a triad." Yao yelled. Yao shouted to the police, "Hey cops. The blonde devil's over here, at the end of the street." One of the officers shouted, "There he is, it's Naruto." Yao turned back to Naruto and exclaimed, "Hope you like jail," with a broad smile, only to be punched in the face and fall to the ground unconscious. While he began to book it and move as far away from the pigs as he could, Naruto remarked, "Well, this place was nice, but I think I overstayed my welcome." Naruto turned into an alley. One of the officers yelled, "We got him now," but when they turned the corner into the alley, they discovered nothing but trash and a dumpster. With considerable bewilderment, the other officer inquired, "Where'd he go?" The two cops turned to see Naruto grinning at them and fiddling with a ring of keys with his index finger. "Hey pigs." Naruto began to run again and asked, "Looking for me?" One of the officers yelled, "After him," but as they attempted to pursue the blonde, they both collapsed and discovered that their legs were handcuffed. The other officer inquired, "How'd he do that?" Naruto began sprinting toward the docks, saying, "Suckers." Cops were also present when he turned the corner. As he fled in the opposite direction, Naruto exclaimed, "Oh man." As he opened his duffel bag, Naruto said, "Map." A map of the city protruded from it after something inside began to move. Naruto took the map and said, "Thanks." Then Naruto pulled out the map and looked at the city's layout to see which way would take him to the docks. "Okay, so if I go down this route." A police officer yelled as he ran toward Naruto, "Hold it right there," but the blonde kicked him in the face. "I'll have to take a right." Another police officer ran at Naruto and another at the blonde on the other side, shouting, "Spread him." Naruto simply kicked them twice, once to each of them. As he replaced the map in the duffel bag, Naruto remarked, "Which will lead me down a big hill of street that goes straight to the dock." "Sweet." Naruto thanked whatever was in the bag that had just yipped at him, saying, "Thanks Mamoru." Naruto grinned as he accelerated and rounded the corner to see a wooden wheelbarrow. A clerk yelled at Naruto to bring it back as he leapt on it and rode it downhill. Naruto yelled back, "Sorry, you're going to need to buy another one cause I'm not bringing it back." As he descended in the wheelbarrow, when Naruto opened the duffel bag and saw a fox kid with a black stripe running from its neck to the tip of its tail sticking out his head, he said, "Hey Mamoru, you got to check this out." Naruto laughed like a crazy man enjoying himself while the small fox kid joyfully raised its front paws in the air. Naruto clung to Mamoru and the duffel bag during the lengthy, enjoyable ride before leaping from the wheelbarrow before it plunged into the sea. Naruto yelled, "Time to find a ship," as he dashed into the docks and discovered the speedboat of future industries. Naruto exclaimed, "Oh yeah! Riding with style," as he leapt into the speedboat. Naruto unlocked the boat's control panel and used a hot wire to activate it. As the boat began to move and he took the driver's seat, Naruto grinned and said, "There we go." A police officer yelled, "Stop right there," as he and several other officers joined him. Naruto yelled, "Later suckers," as he departed the harbor. Naruto laughed uncontrollably and yelled, "Better luck next time." He asked his fox kid companion, "So where to now, little buddy?" With a book in its mouth, Mamoru leapt out of the duffel bag. After taking it and reading it, Naruto came across a page that piqued his curiosity. As he returned the book to Mamoru in return for a map, Naruto exclaimed, "Republic City, a place of beauty, sophistication, blah, 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 but best known for its triad crimes. A place with butts to kick around every corner and new problems and troubles to get into? Sounds like paradise, Republic City. Here comes Naruto the blonde devil," Naruto yelled, releasing a huge blast of wind as he pumped his fist in the air. Mamoru gave his friend a yap. Right, careful with the airbending, geez you sound like my mom," Naruto replied. In the evening the speedboat was parked in the middle of the ocean at night, with Mamoru sleeping on top of Naruto's head and his jacket covering his torso like a blanket. The boat began to move a little all of a sudden. In his sleep, Naruto muttered, "No ladies, I'm sorry, but I'm not really much of a dancer." Mamoru was awakened by the boat's sudden increased movement. Naruto remarked, "Ladies, seriously, I don't dance." The boat began to move so quickly that Naruto was finally awakened. "What the heck?" exclaimed Naruto as Mamoru leapt off his head and he sat up. Naruto stood up and screamed, "Who's rocking the boat? That's supposed to be my job." The boat abruptly stopped, which made the two a little uneasy and alert. Naruto remarked, "Okay, this is spooky." Abruptly, a massive dark snake that appeared to be composed entirely of energy emerged from the water and roared at the two. It had golden markings on its face. Naruto said, did we have a few before going to bed?" In response to his query, Mamoru shook his head. Naruto pointed to the object and said, "Okay, so now we can establish that it's real." When the monster attempted to attack them, Naruto thrust his hands forward and launched a massive windstorm that struck the serpent and drove it away. Naruto hurried to the boat's wheel, hotwired it, and rapidly rode away from the monster, but the creature began to pursue him. Naruto yelled, "Mamoru, map," as the fox kid reached into the duffel bag, pulled out a map, and handed it to him. As he stepped out of the driver's seat and let the fox hop in, Naruto yelled, "The closest place is the Southern Water Tribe. Hate the cold, but forget it, I'm heading there. Mamoru, take the wheel." Surprisingly, the fox was driving it quite well. After tossing the map into the duffel bag, Naruto thrust his palms out the back of the speedboat, shooting massive air blasts out of them. This increased their boat's speed and helped them get away from the monster until they were no longer able to see it. "That's right, you ugly stupid s," was interrupted by another enormous, dark snake emerging from the boat in front of them, roaring as it descended upon them. Naruto stared at the monster as it descended on them for a moment before saying nothing. Before the monster struck their boat, they said, "Aw man." At the Southern Water Tribe's deserted festival, after a supposedly evil spirit attacked, the yearly Glacier Spirits Festival was cancelled. A wet Naruto was sliding on freshly made ice, his duffel bag slung over his shoulder, his other arm outstretched, his palm releasing a powerful stream of air into the water to rapidly form the ice, and a wet Mamoru wrapped in his jacket in one arm. Given that he was 100,000 miles away from the Southern Water Tribe, Naruto began panting from all the air power he delivered as he leapt onto the land of snow and ice as soon as he reached the shore. With his small, trembling companion in his arms, Naruto declared, "Well, we made it." Naruto said, "Don't worry buddy, I'm sure we'll find a nice warm place too. Okay, we'll make a fire." He then proceeded to the festival, placed Mamoru on a game booth shelf, tore some of the wood off the booth, and piled it all together. After that, Naruto reached into his duffel bag, extracted a lighter, and lit the wood on fire. Naruto took Mamoru and sat by the fire to ensure the fox kid was warm, saying, "Okay buddy, let's get you warm. Don't worry little buddy, just take all the time you need and then we'll start stealing and get into trouble again." Naruto replied with a grin. Freeze. According to Naruto's reflex, my butt's already on it thanks to the snow. When the blonde looked up, she saw guards in uniforms from the Northern Water Tribe. Naruto questioned, "Aren't you guys supposed to belong in the north?" One of the guards demanded answers, asking, "Who are you?" Acting like a smartass, Naruto remarked, "Isn't it usually polite to answer someone else's question before you ask one of your own? Answer me." Naruto grabbed his duffel bag and held it and Mamoru tightly as he prepared for them. "Okay fellows, here's how this is going to go. I don't answer your question, you guys come at me. I kick snow in your face and then I run, which is the cue for you to call back." "Get him!" shouted the guard. The blonde was given the opportunity to flee and head directly for the village when Naruto swiftly added air to his leg and kicked a large amount of snow at the guards, covering them in it. Naruto used his airbending abilities to run as fast as the wind and yelled, "Not here 5 minutes," and we wound up getting into trouble. Racked up a new record. Remember to write that down when you're all warmed up, Mamoru. After entering the village, Naruto hid behind an alley to see if everything was okay. He smiled to see that no guards were present, which was fortunate because Mamoru escaped his hold and gave a cute yawn that would have revealed their location. Naruto picked up his jacket from the floor beside Mamoru and put it back on. The blonde grinned and rubbed his hands together like a stereotypical villain when Naruto and Mamoru emerged from the alley and saw a large house. Acting like a happy schoolgirl, Naruto rushed in the direction of the enormous building and exclaimed, "Man, look at that place. I bet there's some cool stuff to loot in there." With a sigh, Mamoru followed his best friend in the hopes of avoiding any serious trouble. Who is he kidding? Since it's Naruto, he will undoubtedly run afoul of the law. Inside Unalak's home, since he had already raided the vault and taken as much cash as his duffel bag and pockets could contain, Naruto picked up a vase and set off to find a way out. Naruto grinned and glanced at his small companion, saying, "This seems like enough." Abruptly, Naruto was violently bumped into, causing the blonde to fall to the ground and shatter the vase. "Aw man," Naruto complained as he got up to see a group of masked men and a tall, burly man, clearly the one who had bumped into him and was carrying an unconscious man, getting up from the ground. "Ignoring Mr. Sandman here, what the hell is your problem? You wrecked the vase," Naruto yelled. The tall, built one commanded, "Get out of our way." Naruto asked, "Or what?" When all of the masked men suddenly surrounded him in their waterbending poses, Naruto picked his nose with his pinky finger, displaying no fear at all but rather a look of indifference toward the entire circumstance. Naruto smirked and once again played the part of a complete smartass, saying, "So what, you're all going to dance around me like little girls do at a birthday girl's party, making me feel like the happiest little person in the world? Sorry, but that just ain't my thing." The tall man yelled, "Get him," as everyone threw water at the child and attempted to freeze him in ice, but for some reason, he vanished. One of the masked men asked out loud, "Where did he go?" and his query was addressed. With a shout of, "Tag!" Naruto leapt down on the man and bouncing off of him. Then Naruto kicked him in the leg, sending him to the ground, and rolled beneath a waterbender's water attack. After that, Naruto used ordinary physical combat to eliminate the enemy waterbenders by dodging, rolling, and ducking their techniques. Unalak awoke just in time to witness the enigmatic blonde boy vanquishing his captors. "Who is this boy?" Unalak thought as the man carrying him fled, but Naruto's slide kick knocked the kidnapper off his feet, sending him and Unalak to the ground after the blonde swiftly vanquished the final bender. As soon as the masked man got to his feet, he launched a strong water attack at the boy. However, the boy, like his friends, ducked the blow and sent the man flying with an uppercut to the jaw. As the man landed, Naruto leapt into the air and stomped on his body, finally knocking the wind out of him. Naruto smirked triumphantly at the vanquished man and remarked, "That was for wrecking my vase." "Hold it right there." Naruto turned to see a female member of the Water Tribe, identified by the color of her skin, dark brown hair, and Winter Water Tribe attire. As the girl ran towards Naruto, his eyes widened in shock, but then he was struck in the face by a block of frozen water that the girl hurled directly at him. Mamoru watched as his best friend was hurled into the air, but he was extremely perplexed when he saw Naruto's dazed expression and smile before he hit the frozen ground. Mamoru approached Naruto and noticed that he was grinning. Naruto grinned and remarked, "Mamoru, I think Cupid finally got me." Mamoru made a sound that sounded like he said, "Huh?" while blinking and tilting his head. Unalak rose from the floor and uttered the name of his niece, Avatar Korra. Korra approached her uncle and said, "Uncle." Unalak patted the snow off his clothes and said, "I'm afraid the young man you had just assaulted had saved me before you arrived." Korra exclaimed, "Oh," as she went to assist the blonde she had struck. "I'm so sorry." Naruto patted the snow off his clothing and said, No, it's okay. You were just trying to save your uncle." Naruto remarked, plus, I do look kinda shady. With her arms crossed and a suspicious expression on her face, Korra questioned, what are you even doing here? Funny thing, me and my little friend Mamoru were on our way to the little festival this place had here. But then, as crazy as this sounds, a giant dark serpent beast with yellow glowing eyes had destroyed our boat, leaving us to swim here, and when we did we found that the festival was completely abandoned, devoid of life. You were attacked by a dark spirit? Exclaimed Korra. Naruto asked, clearly confused, dark spirit? You mean the spirits are pissed off? Why? Unalak stated, it is because of this festival. It is a mockery to the spirits. Yeah, I call BS. Last time I checked, the spirits don't really care about the humans' festivals and celebrations, Naruto replied. Still wary of the blonde, Korra inquired curiously, and how do you know that? Cause I've met some, and they told me themselves. I just said whatever when they told me, not like it was a bad thing. Naruto replied with a smirk. Korra gave him a startled look and asked, you actually met spirits? Naruto shrugged his shoulders and looked sideways, his eyes dull, and he said, yep. The fact that this boy had not only saved him but also communicated with actual spirits piqued Unalak's interest. He might be helpful, Unalak pondered. All of the kidnappers were apprehended by the guards, who then began removing them. Korra ran up to the big man and unmasked him to discover it wasn't her father. Wait, she yelled. Naruto said, anyone you know? Korra replied. No, Korra asked the man, was my father with you? Tonrak didn't want to assist his people, so he chickened out, the individual replied. As the men were being removed, Naruto remarked, smart move considering he's safe from a cell. Hey wait, where's my money? Exclaimed one of them. My pouch of waterbending money's been stolen. Which one of you two guards took my money? Korra was perplexed as to why Naruto was having financial difficulties, but then she noticed that he was squatting and shutting his duffel bag. Naruto grinned at his score. The money he received from the abductors was a nice consolation prize, even though the vase was no longer there. Korra walked over to Naruto and said, hey, what's in the bag? Naruto stood up and tried to look calm, saying, just my stuff, and other things. Then Korra abruptly grabbed his duffel bag and opened it, but as soon as the head of a fox kid emerged, he screamed in terror. Naruto took the bag back from Korra and remarked, I see you met Mamoru. As Korra scratched Mamoru's chin, the fox kid gave her a cute smile. A fox kid? How cute. Naruto slapped himself lightly across the forehead after saying, yeah he sure is. Naruto held out his hands to Korra and remarked, where are my manners? I just remembered I forgot to introduce myself. Naruto smirked as he introduced himself, Naruto. Korra shook his hand and gave him a smile. Korra formally introduced herself as Korra. Naruto grinned and remarked, the avatar? Wow, no wonder that ice hurt like hell. Korra said, oh gosh, I forgot, I am so sorry. Hey, it's okay, your uncle was being kidnapped and you just thought what was best. Can't blame you for that. Naruto replied with a grin. For some reason, Korra couldn't resist grinning at this boy. Naruto smiled at her, satisfied that he had piqued the avatar's curiosity. In an attempt to get an answer, Unalak said, I don't mean to ruin such a moment, but may I ask why you are here in my residence of stay here? Oh well, you see, when Mamoru and I got here, the little guy was shivering from the cold water, so I borrowed some wood from a booth and made a fire with it to warm up the little guy. But some of your guards were very rude to us when we were found out, so we ran off and I came here to make my presence known and complain. Naruto clarified. Well, on behalf of me and the entire tribe I give my sincerest apologies, Unalak replied. Naruto said, oh so you're the southern tribe chief? No, I am Unalak, the northern water tribe chief, Unalak replied. Naruto questioned, really? Why are you here then? Unalak stated, to help our sister tribe. Okay, I don't see how they need help, they look like they were doing fine by themselves. I mean they lived here for generations, doesn't look like they have a problem, Naruto replied. I'm afraid they do. The dark spirits have been attacking the tribe and they need our guidance, Unalak replied. Naruto questioned, isn't that the avatar's job? Unalak raised an eyebrow and said, excuse me? Korra's expression was one of surprise. Well, from what I can tell from her clothing that she's southern water tribe, so since the ones who live here are her people, shouldn't she be the one guiding them? Replied Naruto. Korra's eyes blinked in surprise. Yes, I ought to be the one to lead them. They're not Unalak's tribe. They're mine, Korra pondered. With a charming smile that made Korra blush, Naruto asked, so, Avatar Korra, am I allowed to stay on your behalf since you're pretty much the princess of these parts? Korra replied, oh, yeah, sure. For that, Naruto said, thanks. As he began to leave, Naruto said, "I'll be seeing you around, Water Princess." Korra yelled at Naruto, Wait, don't you need a place to stay?" As he kept walking, Naruto remarked, "I'll just make a camp, no big deal." Although Korra felt she would see him again, she truly wished she could have assisted him. Observing the boy with curiosity, Unalaq also exercised caution. Unalaq thought, "I should really keep an eye on this one." On the streets the following day as usual, Naruto and Mamoru were strolling around and having a good time while stealing things that weren't theirs. All of a sudden, one of the southern water tribesmen had told them something important. A tribe member said, "Did you hear? Tanrak was arrested this morning." "Who's Tanrak?" Naruto asked, but all of a sudden, the sight of a large sum of money in a man's pouch made the blonde smile, and he forgot everything. Naruto approached the man and grabbed the money pouch as he passed. A guard yelled, "Hey you, stop," when he saw Naruto stealing the man's money. Naruto grabbed his Fox Kid companion and began to run, saying, "Time to book it, Mamoru." The blonde saw that many more guards were pursuing him as he ran through the village's streets. Mamoru then threw something at Naruto, saying, "Damn, all this for a pouch of money." Naruto and Mamoru burst out laughing, saying, "Yeah, their wives must be way too busy for them." Naruto ran for a while before coming upon a building that appeared significant. He then began to climb the wall using some airbending and arrived at a window. Then, believing that the soldiers from the Northern Water Tribe would stop pursuing, Naruto opened the window, went inside, and sat on the plush couch. Naruto placed Mamoru on the couch and juggled the money pouch with one hand, saying, and once again, the blonde devil vanishes with the wind. However, the blonde realized he wasn't alone. When Naruto looked up, he saw a group of teenagers, 2 boys and a girl, all of whom had dark hair. One of the boys wore a gray coat with red lining and sleeves rolled up, brown pants, knee-high shoes, and a red scarf around his neck. He had dark hair that stuck up at the front, a slim face, amber eyes, and a muscular build. The other boy was more muscular and thick, with an angular chin, a combed back haircut, a strand of hair down the middle of his forehead, and emerald eyes. He wore a dark forest green coat with light forest green lining, which was similar to the other boy's shirt, brown pants, knee-high shoes, and a green sash tied around his waist. In other words, his clothes were similar to the other boys, but in different colors. The first boy wore a red scarf, while the other had a green sash. In addition to wearing makeup, a stylish coat, a red dress skirt, black stockings, and stylish black boots, the woman had long, dark hair that appeared to have been well groomed due to its volume. In other words, she looked like one of those stylish, wealthy girls, and Naruto felt he was right on the money. Smiling coolly, Naruto said, "Sorry, didn't know this place was occupied." "Wait, that voice, I know that voice anywhere," exclaimed the plush platypus bear. Naruto recognized the voice and said, "Wait a minute, that can't be." A dark-haired, mustachioed man from the water tribe emerged from the stuffed platypus bear's mouth. The man exclaimed, "Naruto my boy," with a broad smile and great enthusiasm. "Well as I live and breathe, Varric," Naruto exclaimed, grinning broadly, as he got to his feet, approached the eccentric man, and shook his hand. "How's it been, old friend?" "Great, except for the fact I am wanted now for planning a rebellion," Varric replied. "What about you?" Naruto juggled the cash in his hand and remarked, "Wanted for the usual." The two then burst out laughing as if they had just heard a funny joke. And it took one morning. The other 3 in the room gave them perplexed looks as they tried to figure out what the hell was going on. Naruto questioned, "So who are these 3? Varric introduced the gorgeous woman in the room, saying, "Oh right, where are my manners? The young beautiful lady is Asami Sato, my new business associate." Naruto held out his hand and said, "Oh, the heiress, or should I say owner of Future Industries. Nice to meet you, I'm sorry about your father." After shaking the blonde's hand, Asami remarked, "It's okay, and it's nice to meet a friend of Varric's." Varric introduced the young earthbender, saying, "The strapping young man next to her is my good friend Bolin, and he's an earthbender." Naruto went for a high five with the earthbender and said, "Sup, the name's Naruto." As a fire ferret emerged from his coat, Bolin returned the high five and said, "Bolin, good to meet you, and this is Pabu." Naruto petted the fire ferret and said, "Hey there little guy." Naruto pointed to the fox on his back on the couch and remarked, "Oh, I almost forgot. The fox lounging on the couch is Mamoru." To which Bolin replied, "Is he a firefox?" Naruto replied, "Nope, just a regular fox." Bolin remarked, "Well that's weird." Then Mamoru responded with a yip. Naruto said, Mamoru, be nice. You can understand him? Bullen cried in disbelief. Naruto grinned and said, like I understand you. Varrick added, and the last one is Mako. I just heard he's a cop. After all, cops and outlaws like him don't get along, so Naruto thought angrily, oh great. Mako merely narrowed her eyes at Naruto, who was clearly a criminal because he had told Varrick that he was wanted for stealing someone's money pouch. Naruto inquired, so, where are you stationed at? Mako said, Republic City. With a cool smile, Naruto patted Mako on the shoulder and said, oh, okay then, nice to meet ya. See why I like this kid? He's great, exclaimed Varrick. Zhu Li, fix Naruto up his favorite. Zhu Li replied, right away sir. As he made his way back to where Varrick and Zhu Li were hiding, Naruto said, Zhu Li, is that you? How you doing girl? Zhu Li reached out of the platypus bear's mouth and handed Naruto a cup of coffee, saying, fine Naruto, thank you for asking. Naruto accepted the cup, sipped from it, and licked his lips because it was so delicious. Naruto taken another sip and grinned, saying, strong, hot and knows how to pack a punch, just my type. Varrick, still annoyed by the absence of honey in his previous cup of tea, remarked, just like your taste in woman. Thank goodness you didn't ask for honey, because this thing doesn't have any and it's a bear for Pete's sake. So anyway, what brings you here to the South Pole? Well, after stealing from the triads of a city whose name I really don't care about or bothered to remember. I took to the seas with Mamoru and headed straight for Republic City. But what the Avatar, a smoking hot babe who knows how to pack a punch I might add, calls a dark spirit which was in the shape of a sea serpent attacked me and my foxy friend over there, making us come all the way here. And when I took some wood from the abandoned Glacier Spirits Festival booths to create a fire. Some Northern Water Tribe guards tried to arrest me for trying to give my friend on the couch some heat to warm up. So I tossed snow at them and ran off and went to complain to whoever ran the place, so I went to the big house to complain. But as I did, some rude men kidnapping some guy who I didn't care about bumped into me and were very rude, so I taught them a lesson, and after that I met the smoking hot Avatar and that creepy Unalak guy who was being kidnapped, and I was given the okay to stay here. But of course after waking up this morning I got into the habit of creating trouble again, so I climbed up this building, went through the window, and here we are. Naruto explained the whole story. With an accusing gesture, Varrick said, I see, so you're the one who stopped the rebels at Naruto. Naruto shrugged his shoulders and said, to be fair, they were rude to me and broke a vase I was liberating, for good reason. According to Varrick, fair enough. How is that fair? Asked Mako, who didn't like Naruto. So Varrick, you've been here longer than I have, what's been happening? Replied Naruto. That Unalak character you accidentally rescued the other day, was taking over the South Pole, so we scheduled to kidnap him so his forces would leave, but the plan was ruined of course. So now the chief of the tribe Tonrak was arrested along with his wife, even though they chickened out and had nothing to do with the kidnapping, and now I'm wanted, and that's why I'm hiding in Ping Ping with Zhu Li. Varrick continued. Naruto remarked, huh, and here I thought my life was crazy. Either way I don't like that Unalak guy, he's got the eyes of a snake in the grass. Coming from you, I'd listen to your words, like that time you told me not to make that deal with that one client. Turns out you were right since he was really a scammer. Varrick continued. So you think Unalak's got the judge on his side to convict his brother? Replied Naruto. According to Varrick, you know I do. As money emerged from the bear's rear, Varrick remarked, Bullen, I got something for you and Naruto around back. Fortunately, Bullen accepted Naruto's statement that, I'm not touching that. Bribe money for the judge or any other man willing to look the other way. Classic. You bet. A couple of yuans and you're set. Bullen, Naruto knows the game, so listen to him, Varrick replied. Naruto smirked and remarked, he's right, after all I learned from the best who was genius enough to hide in a platypus bear. Varrick grinned and waved his hand in flattery, saying, you're too kind. The other people in the room gave Naruto a very shocked look when he said, by the way, you still owe me a ride on Zhu Li. They don't know about the battleship that you named after her, do they? Varrick remarked, well now they do. Prior to the trial, at the courtroom. Bullen and Naruto located the judge, who was the only person who would impose the trial's verdict. Naruto, who sounded like a worried young man, offered the money and said, excuse me, sir, but the people standing on trial are considered real important to the Southern Water Tribe, so do you think you can find it in your heart to find them innocent? I mean, they are family men looking out for those they love, no sense in blaming them for that, right? They are to stand trial for kidnapping Unalak. They may be family men, but they fully knew what they were doing, the prosecutor stated. Okay fine, but the chief of the Southern Water Tribe had nothing to do with this. Varrick planned the whole thing, Blame him, but not the chief, so please look it in your heart to let the leader, the hero and beloved icon of the Southern Water Tribe off the hook. I mean, he wasn't involved in the kidnapping, and I should know. I beat the crap out of all the rebels and he wasn't there. Naruto replied. The judge remarked, he helped in the planning. How the heck did he help in the planning? The rebels had said he had nothing to do with it. Naruto replied. The judge stated, but the plan was created in his home. Well duh, he's their leader, who else would be the first person they trust to let them into their own home, but that doesn't mean he helped in any way. I was there and he rejected the idea immediately when it was spoken. Naruto replied. Mamoru bit Bulin's leg, causing him to howl in agony, just as Bulin was about to explain that he wasn't there because he claimed to have arrived last night. Don't mind my cousin, he's just playing with my pet fox who can play a little rough sometimes. Look, you seem like a nice boy, but this isn't part of your business, the judge responded. Naruto sounded emotionally irate as he said, that man is my future father. In.law, it is my business. In order to prevent the earthbender from saying anything that would cause trouble, Mamoru had to bite Bulin's leg once more. The judge said, I'm sorry, but this is in the hands of the law. No, it's not, it's in your hands and you know the chief is innocent, I can see it in your eyes. Naruto replied. The judge was about to turn away when Naruto intervened, saying, my answer is still no to your bribery. As he reached into his pocket and pulled out a massive quantity of cash that neither Bulin nor the judge had ever seen before, Naruto said, wait a minute. 500,000 yuan if you look the other way for the chief. Naruto replied. When Bulin heard this, his mouth nearly dropped off his face and onto the ground, and the judge gaped at the cash. With a serious expression, Naruto questioned, so you gonna take it? The judge said gravely, no, I must not, you leave me alone or else I'll stand you for trial. Alright then, stand me on trial for trying to help a good man, Naruto replied. The judge asked, how do you know he's a good man? With a serious expression on his face, Naruto remarked, he raised the avatar and I know for a fact that she's a great girl and a man who raised someone like her is a good man, I know it. The judge was perspiring because he didn't like how this boy was frightening him. After saying, I am done talking to you, the judge hurried away from Naruto. Naruto scowled at the man's vanishing figure. As he made his way back to Bulin, Naruto remarked, there's something up with that man. Naruto declared, Varrick was right, this trial's rigged. Bulin said, startled, no, wait, when you said you were there. Naruto said, I lied. And you mentioning Korra's dad being your future father. In.law? A lie as well, but I wouldn't mind it, after all the avatar's a looker. Naruto replied. Yeah, she sure is, but she's Mako's girlfriend, Bulin replied. Naruto exclaimed in disbelief, seriously? Mr. Personality got her? That's when Bulin burst out laughing. Bulin continued to laugh and said, Mr. Personality, good one, but my brother's not so bad. Naruto questioned, he's your brother, how do you deal with him? Easy, he's a real softie when you get to know him, plus just be yourself and ignore his look, Bulin replied. Naruto smirked and remarked, when you mean look, you mean his entire face, right? Bulin remarked, you sound very mean. Naruto shrugged and said, your brother irritates me because I'm an outlaw and he's a police officer. You're an outlaw? Bulin cried. Naruto exclaimed, geez, shouted it out to the world, why don't ya? Bulin said, sorry. Patting Bulin's shoulder, Naruto remarked, it's okay. We better head to the trial. Bulin worriedly said, but what about Korra's dad? What do we do to save him? With his thumb on his own chest and his arm around Bulin's neck, Naruto grinned and said, you leave that to me, Bulin. I am an expert at getting myself and others out of trouble. Really? Where were you when Mako and I were in the triads? Bulin responded. As he, Bulin, and Mamoru made their way directly to the courtroom, Naruto remarked, somewhere in this weird world. Within the courtroom, a trial in progress as Bulin and Asami watched the trial that determined the fate of Korra's parents and the rebels. Naruto sat beside them. Bulin would have given the money to a couple of strangers dressed like two powerful people if Naruto hadn't been with him and carried the cash. Bulin whispered to Asami, we believe the trial is rigged. What? Asami exclaimed, startled. Asami's eyes widened as Bulin whispered, well, Naruto thinks it's rigged because the judge didn't take an added 500,000 yuan he put in with Varrick's money. It wasn't just the fact he didn't take the money like any other judge would do, but it was because of how he looked at the bucks. His eyes were widened with fear along with sweat going down his brow. The guy was afraid of taking the cash, like his life depended on the choice, and I know for a fact with the amount of fear inside those eyes of his that his life does depend the choices he makes today. Naruto continued. What do you mean? Who would the judge be afraid of? Replied Asami. Naruto pointed to Unalak's back and said, how about the one person who has more power than he does and can decide his fate if that person was displeased of the results? Unalak. But why would he want to see his own brother be sent to jail? Bullen inquired. The three were unaware that Korra was listening in on them and hung on to everything they said. I heard the story of how this Tonrak dude got banished, and it's obvious that these anonymous bandits were paid off by Unalak so Tonrak could go into this spirit forest or whatever and cause some accidental damage to it so the spirits could attack and Unalak could calm them down and look like he was a better candidate to become the Northern Water Tribe chief since the eldest Tonrak was supposed to be chosen and lead to his brother being banished so he would never have to worry about him screwing anything up for him. And now look at where we are. Tonrak on the end of having judgment placed upon him and Unalak sitting by and enjoying the fun of seeing his elder brother on trial for something he didn't do and has nothing to worry about since the judge works for him, said. But why would Unalak want to see his brother convicted? Replied Bolin. Elementary for outlaws, my dear Bolin. The water princess is his reason to see his brother go down. What I've heard, Unalak's got two messed up twins for kids while his elder brother had the Avatar as his child. That sole fact must have torn him up inside that he wanted nothing more than to ruin his brother's life, and getting her on his side was just phase one of hurting the man and making him suffer. Naruto replied. The realization that Naruto was correct caused Bolin, Asami, and Korra's eyes to widen with shock. Everything now made sense to them. Naruto, glaring at Unalak's back, declared, I really want to punch the guy's teeth out. Not before me. Korra's hand clenched into a quivering fist. I can sense the guy's aura. He's a snake in the grass and a stone cold. The court is now in session, declared Hoda, the judge, using his gavel. Naruto remarked cynically, oh goody, the coward finally found his cute little toy hammer, this should be fun. Hearing his name called out, Naruto realized that he was being referred to as Unalak's savior, something he didn't want to be known for. Naruto sat back and listened to the trial, completely bored. Hoda believed that Naruto had all the proof he needed when he witnessed Korra being questioned about what had transpired at the meeting at her father's house. Naruto replied, some judge. Hoth said, is there something you wish to say, young man? Yes. How are you going to judge someone so quickly without getting all the details of what went down in the meeting? Replied Naruto. Hoda, who didn't like this boy, asked, what is that supposed to mean? Well, it's just you didn't ask what everyone was talking about in the meeting, you know. Who started the conversation about the plan? Who went along with it? Did they know the consequences? You didn't ask any of those questions? Naruto stated while rising from his seat. Well, Hoda's eyes widened slightly as Naruto remarked, I mean you didn't even ask the rebels what happened in the meeting. Hoda shot back, they would most likely lie. Their faces were seen, their identities confirmed, and no doubt they're getting life in the slammer. What's the point in lying now if it's not going to do anything for them? And it does look like that they don't like their chief right now, said Naruto. Hoda was now in a difficult situation because he was aware that the blonde was correct, and it seemed that he now had supporters who shared his reasoning. All I'm saying is that I feel everyone deserves to hear the rebels' side of the story. I mean that isn't too much to ask, huh judge? Naruto replied with a smirk. Ultimately, Hoda was forced to listen to the rebels because he was unable to stop perspiring. The rebels had presented their versions of events, but the story remained the same. Tanrak left because he didn't want to be involved in the rebellion, with Varrick serving as the operation's ringleader. Additionally, they didn't like the blonde at all because Naruto had stopped them. As he walked out of the room, Hoda said, okay, I've heard everything I need to. I will return shortly with my decision. When Korra turned back to face Naruto, he was reading a book about her former persona, Avatar Aang. However, he winked at her, causing her to blush and turn away. When Naruto went to look for Bolin after noticing that he had left, he discovered that the crazy girl Eska had coerced him into marrying her at sunset and dragging the sobbing Bolin away. Naruto simply returned to his seat and made the decision to assist him later, if he is capable of doing so at all. Naruto said to Asami, hey, Mako is Bolin's brother, right? Asami said, yeah. Why do you ask? Asami was shocked when Naruto said, apparently if we don't do something Mako's going to have a sister.in.law. Mako, who was seated beside Asami, said, you know I'm right here. Naruto casually remarked, oh, hey, didn't see you there. Mako glared at him. Asami remarked, oh man, poor Bolin. Yeah, royals like that Eska chick that's had everything given to them ever since their birth usually are crazy, Naruto replied. Hey, I wanted to know something. Shoot, Naruto approved. Asami inquired, how do you know Varrick? Well, One time when I worked for the Triads, they made a deal with Varric and I was chosen to deal with him since they thought he was nuts. Varric took a liking to me. I helped him out a bit. We became good friends. Yada, yada, yada. You get the point. Naruto continued. Asami said, I see. Then Naruto saw that Unalaq had gone back to his chair. Where has he been? Naruto pondered. Then Hoda went back into the room and took his seat again. The accused obeyed Hoda's order. Would the defendants please rise and stand before me? As Korra's mother moved forward, Hoda commanded, Senna, please step forward. After being released from her handcuffs by a guard, Hoda declared, I have found you, innocent. You are free to go. After that, Senna rushed over to embrace her daughter, who happily returned the hug. As Korra's father moved forward, Hoda commanded, Tanrak, please step forward. After a guard freed Tanrak from his restraints, Hoda commanded, I have found you also innocent. You are free to go. Tanrak was able to return to his family and embrace them all together. Naruto grinned when he saw Korra happy. He wasn't sure why, but it made him happy. Everyone gasped when Hoda declared, on the charge of treason, I have found you all guilty. The punishment for this crime is death. After giving the judge a fierce look, Naruto made the decision to talk to him later. Hoda began to depart as the guards escorted the rebels away, saying, Court adjourned. Korra yelled, Hold on, you can't just kill them. If you take their lives then I'll take yours. As everyone gaped at her. Naruto's heart seemed to be pounding a million times a second as he gazed at Korra in disbelief and amazement. As Naruto gazed at her, he thought, whoa, she's amazing. Unalaq approached Hoda and said, Korra, calm down, I'll talk with him. I know I promised that I'd respect whichever decision you'd made, but I must ask you to reconsider. Show these men mercy. Unalaq responded. Knowing that Unalaq was genuinely attempting to gain Korra's trust, Naruto gazed at him. Turning to face the rebels, Hoda said, Very well, I'll change their punishment. Prior to the rebels being removed, Hoda declared, Your lives will be spared, but you will live them out in prison. When Naruto saw Hoda go, he decided to follow suit. After grabbing his duffel bag, Naruto left the courtroom and made his way directly to the building's exit. Naruto turned to see Korra sprinting toward him and exclaimed, Naruto, wait. Naruto smiled and introduced himself as, Hey Water Princess, what's up? Then, to his surprise, Korra hugged him. As Korra retreated from Naruto, she said, I wanted to thank you for speaking up. Korra grinned and said, If you hadn't, my dad probably would have joined the rebels. No problem, I always hate when someone innocent is on the receiving end of law's judgment. Naruto replied. Listen Korra, something's up with the judge. Korra asked gravely, Does it have something to do with Unalaq? Wait, how did you? I heard you telling Asami and Bolin about what you thought Unalaq has been doing to my father and I agree with you, Korra replied. Naruto grinned and remarked, Wow, you got good hearing. His smile caused Korra to flush uncontrollably. Well, if you're willing, I could use some help with talking with the old man. As she and Naruto headed for the door, Korra remarked, We'll take Naga. Naruto said, Who's Naga? Later Hoda was driving along the road beside a mountain when he became aware that Korra and Naruto, who was riding Naga, were pursuing him. Hoda began to accelerate, but the swift polar bear dog slammed the car to the side, causing Hoda to lose control and have it slam into the mountainside. Naruto opened his door, grabbed Hoda, and slammed him against the side of his car while he moaned from the impact. Fearfully, Hoda asked, What do you want? Naruto glared menacingly and said, To know what's Unalaq's game, so spill or else. Bravely, Hoda said, Or else what? Hoda and Korra's eyes widened, the first in shock, the second in fear, as Naruto cocked his fist back and added air around it before slamming it directly into Hoda's car, leaving a massive dent. Naruto grinned and remarked, I think that spoke volumes, don't you think? Look, all I did was do everything he said to keep the trial looking fair. He wanted Tanrak out of the way, but after you spoke up he knew that would only make people suspicious, said Hoda. Naruto dragged Hoda to Naga and placed his head at Naga's open mouth, saying, Yeah, I got that and the fact that he only spared those rebels' lives so he could keep Korra on his side, but what I really want to know is about the banishment. With a menacing grin, Naruto questioned, Unalaq was behind Tanrak's punishment, was he not? Yes, he was, Hoda exclaimed, terrified of becoming Naga's new chew toy. Naruto said in a frightening voice, Tell me everything you know, I want to cherish this moment. Korra couldn't help but be in awe of Naruto's skill at intimidating people and obtaining information. She must take some cues from him. In the office of Varric, Korra, who was still in Ping Ping with Naruto by her side, told Mako, Asami, and Varric, Unalaq is a traitor and a liar. Varric remarked, I've been telling you that from the beginning. Mako questioned, what happened? Turns out Naruto was right. Unalak hired the barbarians to attack the North Tribe's village. Then he told them to hide out in the spirit forest knowing that my dad would go after them. Korra responded. Unalak wanted your dad out of the way so he could become chief, Mako replied. Mako glared at Naruto as he joked, yeah, glad you figured it all out. I was confused about the whole thing. I suggest we tell your dad and bust out the rebels, he's going to need them. Naruto replied. Korra replied, agreed. You're going to trust him? Korra, he's a criminal, Mako replied. Korra defended Naruto by saying, he also saved my father from ending up in prison. I trust him. With the exception of a nice old man he had met long ago, no one had ever stood up for him, so Naruto couldn't help but smile at her. But Korra, you realize if you do this, there's no going back, Mako replied. Naruto said, she's a big girl, she knows the consequences. Korra grinned. Besides, better than what's happening now. Mako had to agree, saying, good point. Korra said, so will you help me or not? Mako replied, of course I'll help you. Asami replied, me too. Varric said, count me in. Korra asked the blonde, what about you, Naruto? Naruto smiled and Korra smiled back, saying, I thought I was already in? Mako was not pleased at all with the way the others saw them staring at one another. The doors abruptly opened, revealing Bolin dressed in a water tribe costume that was identical to Eska's Pabu, and the earthbender's hair styled like a gelled bowl. Naruto said, oh snap Bolin, I almost forgot about you. Man, and I thought that Eska chick was crazy enough, but don't worry I'll get you out of this whole marriage thing. Bolin pleaded, please do. Look, we're about to bust out the rebels, are you in? Replied Naruto. Bolin questioned, will Eska hate me for doing so? I don't think so, but we're planning to go to Republic City after this so that'll get you away from her for a while. Naruto replied. Done. Said Bolin. Mako stated, we didn't agree to go to Republic City. Naruto remarked, better than staying here after the bust. The boy's right, Varric concurred. Now all of you gather around Ping Ping. Let's talk plan. In the jail Asami and her electrified glove abruptly pulled a guard who was strolling down the prison's hallway into a square-shaped hole in the ground, shocking him into unconsciousness. Naruto, Tanrak, and Team Avatar leapt out of the hole and made their way directly to the rebel cells. Mako questioned Naruto, why are you still carrying that bag? Naruto grinned and remarked, you never know when it might come in handy. Then Naruto came to a halt, causing everyone to turn to face him. Naruto turned to Unalak and remarked, had a feeling that you'd be here. Where are the rebels? On a ship headed to the northern tribe. They'll serve out their sentences there, Unalak replied. Bring them back or else I'll take you out along with the rest of your army, said Korra. Remember who you are. As the Avatar, you cannot threaten war. You must remain neutral, Unalak replied. Then Naruto shrugged his shoulders and said, he is right. Korra wanted to strike Naruto in the head, but Naruto threw knives at Unalak instead. After swerving to avoid the knives, Unalak saw Naruto standing nearby with his leg raised. Naruto then threw an axe kick at him, but Unalak leapt back to avoid the blow. With a menacing, toothy smile, Naruto remarked, but the same cannot be said about me. Unalak glared at Naruto and remarked, you have been a thorn in my side for a while now. Naruto cracked his knuckles and said, and you have been making me urge to want to deck you in the face. Tanrak declared, enough, Naruto, this is my fight. Unalak remarked, oh brother, you've already lost this fight. Then Mamoru leapt from Naruto's bag and yelled at something behind them. They all turned to see a guard from a northern waterbender hurling jagged icicles at them. Mako swiftly melted the icicles by shooting fire at them. Abruptly, Unalak launched his own torrent of icicles towards them. While Mako threw a burst of fire at the guard, rendering him unconscious, Bolin swiftly used his earthbending to form an earthy shield from the ground to protect them. All I ever wanted was to help you realize your destiny, Avatar Korra, Unalak replied. Korra yelled, well I don't need your help. Korra ran at Unalak after the shield fell, but Unalak was ready for her. Unalak had sent water to the ground in preparation for his next move, which was to freeze Korra's feet in order to stop her in her tracks, when the shield appeared. After temporarily depriving Korra of her ability to move, Unalak sent a large ball of ice in her direction to render her unconscious. Naruto yelled the Avatar's name, Korra. As he swiftly passed her, unaware of what had happened to him, Naruto sent a blast of air at Unalak, sending him back into the wall, and sent wind to his fist, shattering the ice ball. Everyone was in complete awe of Naruto's incredible achievement. As he assisted Korra in breaking free from the ice trap, Naruto remarked, If we get to Varrick's boat, we can still save the rebels. Korra exclaimed, "You're an airbender." Korra blushed as Naruto smirked and said, "And you're beautiful." Naruto and the others fled in the direction of an exit, saying, "Now that we established that, we better get out of here." When Unalaq looked up to see that they had all left, he began to get up. "What, another airbender?" Unalaq thought, "It's just gotten interesting." Later Tanrak, Varrick, Zu.Li, who was still inside Ping Ping, Mamoru, who was inside his blonde companion's bag, and Naruto were all in the team Avatar at the docks where the boats were being stored. Varrick's boats were being guarded by 2 Northern Water Tribe guards. Asami inquired, "How do we get on that ship?" Naruto said, "Leave that to the master." Before the Fox Kid handed it to the blonde, Naruto opened his bag and saw Mamoru with eyeshadow in his mouth. Before making his way directly to the throng, Naruto swiftly applied it to one of his eyes to make it appear as though he had a black eye. Naruto swiftly moved behind an unwary man and gave him a full pouch. The man raised an incredulous eyebrow and looked at his hand to locate the pouch. Naruto then fell to the ground, appearing to be a defenseless victim while the man wondered where the pouch had come from. Naruto yelled, "Help! He stole my money," and pointed accusingly at the man. When the guards saw the man, they rushed at him. "Wait, I didn't." Naruto fled as the man was tackled to the ground. Bullen exclaimed, "Whoa! Gotta hand it to him, he sure knows how to cause a distraction." Asami replied. Naruto gestured for the others to come with him. After that, Varrick started the boat, and the group boarded. "I still say that you should have let me and Zhu Li do our little trick," Varrick replied. Naruto wiped the makeup from his eye and said, "One of the last things I ever want to see is a platypus bear crap out money." Korra asked Varrick, "Do you think you can get us to the ship?" Varrick pointed to the numerous boats farther ahead and said, "Sure, as long as you get us past our friends from the north. If only we had a plane that could get me close to those ships, then I could waterbend them out of the way," Korra replied. Varrick slammed Ping Ping's paw onto a red button, causing a plane to emerge from beneath the ship's deck. "A plane? Why didn't you say so?" Varrick exclaimed. Mako asked, "Why do you have a plane on your boat?" Naruto remarked, "It'd be stupid for a rich man not to have one." "Exactly, it's the best thing to have just in case the boat sinks," Varrick replied. Asami asked, "But there's no runway, how are we supposed to take off?" Varrick gave the order, Zu.Li, take a note, build runway. According to Zu.Li, "Yes sir," Korra remarked, "I have an idea." Korra and Mako leapt onto the plane's wings and prepared for Korra's plan after constructing a temporary runway out of 2 long pieces of wood to help lift the aircraft into the air. Asami turned on the aircraft and began to take off. "Now," Korra exclaimed as she reached behind her and unleashed a powerful burst of fire, and Mako followed suit. After leaving the boat, the plane took off and flew directly at the boats. As Naruto watched the 3 take off, he couldn't help but smile. Naruto whispered to himself, "She's one of a kind, she's strong, fiery, cute, and smart too." Korra used her avatar state to bend the water as the boat approached the guarding boats directly, causing them to move aside and create space for Varrick's boat to pass. When a guard on a northern patrol boat looked through a telescope to see who was behind the wheel, he discovered a platypus bear. The guard told his superior, Sir, you're not going to believe this." The group then began looking for the ship that was carrying the rebels, and Korra eventually found it. Asami flew near the side of the ship, heading directly for its location. Korra yelled, "Jump!" as she, Mako, and Asami leapt from the aircraft and into the water. The plane then crashed into the water and exploded, drawing the attention of every guard. As she, Mako, and Asami swam toward the boat, Korra used her waterbending to create an air bubble for them to breathe in. The guards on deck were then whipped off the ship by Korra, who encircled her arms with water tentacles and used her waterbending to raise them onto the ship. Korra sent a stream of water at one of the guards, sparing him and sending him straight for the door leading inside the ship, only to have him slam into the wall and then freeze there. Korra demanded answers, asking, "Where are the prisoners?" Korra, Mako, and Asami released the inmates after receiving responses from the guard. When Korra and the others reached the ship's edge, Varrick's boat approached them and they leapt onto it while the remaining northern guards began attacking them with water. After they were all on board, Varrick drove the ship as quickly as he could back towards the South Pole, away from the northern boat. Later as they headed toward the rebels, Naruto questioned Tanrak, "So now that we all know Unalaq is a traitor to both the South and Northern Water Tribes, then that means that the rebellion is official, right?" "Yes. I've been running from my past for too long. It's time to put my brother in his place," Tanrak replied. "Also, I wish to thank you for everything, Naruto. Naruto waved it away, saying, it was nothing. Nothing? Are you insane? Korra yelled as she approached the blonde. You saved my dad and the rebels and you helped expose Unalak for who he was. That's not nothing. I don't understand it though. I mean, you're a criminal, so why would you help any of us? Asked Mako. Well, Mr. Personality, it's because I'm not like the criminals you're used to. There is such a thing as a criminal who's happy to help others, just as there are cops who help out bad people for a sum of money or anything else. Naruto replied. Mako couldn't argue with that reasoning. Naruto bowed respectfully to Chief Tanrak and said, Anyway, I wish you and your men the best, Chief Tanrak. Korra couldn't help but smile at Naruto's kindness. One of the rebels put his fists over his heart and said, You have our support, Chief Tanrak. Korra grinned proudly and said, Mine too. I'll be proud to fight alongside you, Dad. Tanrak said, No, Korra. But you said the South doesn't stand a chance against Unalak's forces. I can help, Korra replied. The best way for you to help is by getting the President of the United Republic on our side. The South can give Unalak a good fight for a while, but we'll need the United Forces to help us win this war. Tanrak stated. Although Korra was disappointed that she was unable to support her father during the revolution, she sensed Naruto's hand resting on her shoulder. Looking into the blonde's eyes, Korra realized that he was telling her to pay attention to her father, which gave her a renewed sense of resolve. All right, I'll get you all the help you need, Korra replied. After that, Korra approached her father, and the two hugged each other. I love you, Dad. Tanrak grinned broadly and said, I love you too. Tanrak turned to face Naruto as they parted ways. Naruto, I wish to entrust you to stand by Korra's side while I stay behind to fight. Naruto grinned and scratched the back of his head, saying, You can count on me, sir. I mean, Korra doesn't look like someone who needs someone always standing beside her when things get rough, but it doesn't hurt to have someone there just in case you need them, right? While Korra's cheeks flushed a charming pink as she grinned at Naruto, Tanrak nodded and grinned at him. Tanrak had assembled the rebels and brought them close to the home of the southern tribe, where he had built an ice platform for them to ride back to the shore. Naruto and Team Avatar observed Tanrak and the rebels return to shore. I really need to thank you too, Korra, Naruto, Bullen replied. For what? Asked Korra. Naruto replied, For getting him away from that crazy Eska chick. But I started a civil war. Bullen grinned broadly in relief and happiness as he said, Exactly, now Eska and I are officially broken up. Glancing through his telescope, Varric remarked, Oh, looks like we have company. And not the fun kind. As everyone turned to face the window, they saw something headed directly at them. What is that? Asked Mako. Bullen grabbed Varric's telescope and peered through it to see an enraged and terrifying Eska, resembling a hideous banshee, approaching them directly from the water while wearing makeup. Bullen remarked, That would be my darling Eska. Naruto grabbed the controls and started the boat, saying, Okay, Crazy X alert. Time to hightail it out of here. Mako asked, Do you even know how to drive a boat? Varric calmed the other's nerves by saying, Of course he does. I let him drive before. Everyone's nerves returned when he said, I just hope he's gotten better. Naruto yelled, Hang on, and began to steer the boat as far away from Eska and the South Pole as he could. The following day Naruto alerted the others, saying, Ladies and gentlemen, we're nearing Republic City. Korra was on deck, but she couldn't resist glancing up at the deck window to see Naruto grinning while continuing to drive. Asami approached Korra and asked, What are your thoughts? I just can't stop thinking about what he did to Unalak, Korra replied. The two looked up at Naruto, still stunned by the revelation, and said, Yeah, I hear you. To think that there was another airbender in this world. I didn't even think it was possible. I wonder how Tenzin will take it. Hey ladies, I know I'm interesting and all, but you really should get ready since we're about to hit shore. Naruto laughed. Korra had to quickly turn away to cover up the flush that was starting to show on her cheeks. Asami saw this, but because of Mako, she wasn't sure if she should frown or smile. Varric remarked, I hope you've improved at parking this thing. I feel insulted, Varric. No one got hurt last time and I only got better at this. Naruto replied. Fortunately, Naruto calmed everyone's nerves by effortlessly parking the enormous boat. They all met with Chief Baifong after getting off. As Korra approached the group, Chief Baifong said, Welcome home, Avatar, thanks for starting a war. I didn't start a war, exclaimed Korra. Naruto gulped and looked fearfully at the chief, saying, Well, I did, but it's not as complicated as you're making it seem. Naruto began to return to the boat in silence. When Chief Baifong saw Naruto, she gave the order, Hold it right there. After swallowing, Naruto turned to face Chief Baifong. Do I know you? Naruto shrugged his shoulders and said, I don't know. People say us blondes look alike. Chief Bifong remarked, but not all blondes have whisker, like birthmarks. Smiling, Naruto said, touché. Korra defended the blonde by saying, Chief Bifong, please calm down. Naruto helped us back in the South Pole, he can be trusted. Chief Bifong exclaimed, Naruto? The blonde devil, causing everyone's eyes to enlarge. That's you? I knew we couldn't trust you, Mako exclaimed as he assumed his firebending position. Acting calm, Naruto said, geez, calm down no fun junior. Korra said, Wait, what's going on? Chief Bifong declared Naruto's wanted status. Naruto the blonde devil wanted in the Earth Nations and Fire Nations for vandalism, extortion, thieving, conning, and minor assault, worth 100,000 yuan. Everyone gasped as they turned to face Naruto, who appeared astonished by his newfound value. Mamoru poked his head out of the duffel bag with a look of surprise on his face, and Naruto exclaimed, A 100,000 yuan? Mamoru exclaimed, yes, it did. Hey Mamo, I thought that other wanted poster said I was worth 10,000 yuan. Mamoru simply shrugged his shoulders and sounded like he said, I don't know, in his kit-like manner when asked, then how come it went up another zero? Either way, I'm flattered. I mean I'm not worth that much, but it's a real improvement from the last worth on my head. Naruto grinned. With a frustrated expression on her face, Chief Bifong remarked, great, an enthusiastic one. How'd it go up? Inquired Naruto. With a frustrated expression on her face, Korra said, let me guess, Unalak. Chief Bifong clarified, yep, the North raised the amount for him after he assaulted their leader. Hey, he had it coming. He almost hurt Korra with a ball of ice, Naruto said. Mako remarked, he's right Chief Bifong. Yeah, Naruto is a good guy. He was right about Unalak being a power-hungry tyrant. He saved my father from Unalak's evil plan to get rid of him and he saved my life. Korra stood by the blonde. Bullen grinned and added, plus he saved me from marrying a crazy waterbending princess. Surprisingly composed, Naruto remarked, guys, it's pointless to defend me. The law is the law. No doubt you wish for me to go with you back to HQ for some interrogation. According to Chief Bifong, I'm afraid so. Naruto let out a frustrated sigh. Naruto approached her and said, all right, let's just get this over with. Varrick exclaimed, that's it? You're not going to run? The daughter of the old chief, Toph Bifong, is right in front of me with a number of officers as backup right behind her and the only route to escape is to hijack your boat and there is no way that'll work since they'll swarm me before I can even get to the deck. Naruto clarified. Mako nodded when Chief Bifong said, got to give it to the kid, he knows how things can go down. To the surprise of everyone, including Mamoru, Naruto shrugged and said, besides, I don't want to escape. Why not? I mean I want you around since you're cool, but still why not? Replied Bullen. Naruto looked at Korra and blushed, saying, well, because. Naruto blurted out, of the promise I made to Tanrak to stay by Korra's side. Asami witnessed Naruto's actions, even though the others might have bought it. He's infatuated with Korra. Korra is beginning to feel the same way about him. Asami thought, poor Mako. Well I'm sorry, but some promise isn't going to keep you out of the law's hands. Lin Bifong replied. With a sincere expression of sadness on his face, Naruto said, I know. Korra also felt depressed. Bullen yelled, wait, to get everyone's attention, he's an airbender. What? Lin exclaimed in disbelief as her subordinates turned to face them, with Naruto being the most startled. Bullen responded, yeah, we saw it for ourselves. However, Naruto struck him in the back of the head. Ow. Why'd you do that? I didn't want you telling people that, Naruto yelled, his face plastered with annoyance. Varrick remarked, oh, so you haven't let the cat out of the bag yet? Mako asked, you knew? Of course I knew. Got to know everything about your friends, partners and clients, Varrick replied. Lin asked, so you're also an airbender? Naruto sighed angrily and replied, yeah. An airbender, who's also a criminal, Lin replied. Huh, now that you say it out loud it does sound pretty shocking, Mako replied. Oh come on, not all airbenders can be nomads. In fact there were some jerks in the past. At least that's what my grandma told me and what my great-grandparents told my dad, Naruto chuckled. Chief Bifong said, there are more of you. Crossing his arms, Naruto declared, I have the right not to answer that. Then that means yes, but none of that is my concern. You're the only airbender that matters at this moment. Lin replied. After giving her a long look, Naruto grinned at her. Naruto surprised Korra, Mako, Bullen, Asami, and Chief Bifong by saying, I like you, you're cool. I didn't even think Chief Baifeng could be considered cool, Korra thought. Chief Baifeng, since he's one of the only airbenders in the world that isn't related to Avatar Aang, couldn't Naruto get off the hook this time? Replied Asami. I can't give him special treatment, but as long as someone of high reputation and status were willing to look after him, then I'd be fine with that, said Chief Baifeng. Then Tenzin can watch him, Bolin proposed immediately. Who? Inquired Naruto. He's the only other airbender that is known to exist besides his kids, replied Asami. And he can't because he's all the way at the Southern Air Temple with his family, said Korra. Bolin slumped his shoulders and said, oh yeah. I can watch him, I've done it before, Varrick said, beaming broadly. For reasons I cannot explain right now, I believe it's best I don't be under your watch, Varrick, you understand? Replied Naruto. Varrick had said, yeah, good point. Although nobody understood what they were discussing, Mako had a brilliant idea that led him to start watching the two. Oh, perhaps Chief Baifeng could keep an eye on him, Bolin repeated. Naruto grinned and said, Bolin, you basically said to send me away with the cops anyway. Bolin slumped his shoulders once more and said, oh, sorry. Naruto appeared to have run out of options and would have to accompany Chief Baifeng, but then Korra abruptly put her arm around him, forcing him to look into her piercing eyes. Korra said gravely, I'll watch him. Naruto gave her a startled look before grinning at her out of gratitude. Are you sure? Demanded Lin. Naruto grinned even more when Korra remarked, yeah, I mean he'd promised to stay by my side so I'll be always watching him. Lin said, all right then, he's all yours. Varrick grinned jokingly and said, till death do you part. What? Korra and Naruto exclaimed, their faces flushed, forcing them to separate their arms. Varrick grinned broadly and said, I'm just kidding. A little humor never hurt anybody. Bolin laughed until his stomach ached from Varrick's joke. Bolin said, oh man, that was a good one. Then he saw his brother glare. Bolin said uneasily, but it totally would never happen since, you know, Korra is with Mako and all. Naruto shrugged and said, yeah, I know she's dating Mr. Personality. Mako began to leave, saying, yes she is and quit calling me that. Naruto followed Mako and said, okay, then how about Scowl Boy? No fun Junior. Sir Tall, dark and brooding. Oh, Glare Meister, it fits because you always do that. Shut up, shouted Mako. Asami giggled and Zu.Li remained silent, but she found it amusing that Bolin, Varrick, and Korra laughed at Naruto's nicknames for Mako. Mako, I want you back on the beat. There's going to be a Southern Water Tribe peace march tonight. I need you there to make sure things don't get out of hand, Chief Baifeng responded. Mako declared, I'm all yours. I'll go too. The people of the South need to see that the Avatar is on their side in the fight against the Northern invaders, Korra replied. Before heading out, Chief Baifeng remarked cynically, great, that should calm them down. Naruto smirked and crossed his arms as he remarked, look at that, 5 minutes here and you're back to the beat. You just better watch yourself, because the minute you slip up and go back to your criminal ways, I'll be there to put the cuffs on you. Mako stared at him. Oh, I'm so scared, Naruto said, feigning fear. Naruto grinned and said, please Scowl Boy, I can be a good man when I want to be, trust me. However, Mako continued to glare at him. Naruto said, striking the Scout's honor pose, Scout's honor. Mako said, Korra, keep a good eye on this guy. Don't worry, she will. Anyway, when do we get to see the president? Replied Naruto. Mako glared and said, you're not seeing the president. Naruto scowled back, and why not? I have my rights to see him. Mako leaned closer, arguing, you don't as a criminal. Naruto argued back, leaning closer. Unless I do one crime in this city, then I do have the right to see him, he said. Then the two began to butt their foreheads together and glare at one another. Korra shouted, would you two stop fighting? As she shoved the two past one another. Well, he started it, argued Naruto, accusingly pointing at Mako. Mako glared at Naruto and exclaimed, I started it? Without mercy? Yes, you started it. I have the right to see him as long as I don't involve myself in any criminal activities, Naruto replied. Asami remarked, he's right Mako. Mako remarked, not helping. Well, maybe she's not helping you, but she's helped me with the support, Naruto replied. Mako said, just watch yourself. Mako glared at Naruto when he said, I got your girlfriend doing that. It was obvious that the firebender wanted to punch him. But I'm being serious, I will not do a single crime while I'm here. Naruto replied. Anyway, Varrick, did Zhu Li get an appointment with President Raiko? Of course. Varrick smiled confidently, adding, "We'll get him on board." Mako said as she left, "Whatever, I gotta go to work." As she started to leave, Asami said, "I better go check on my factory." As Korra and Naga began to leave, Korra declared, "I'm going to find out about this peace march." Varric prodded Zhu Li's nose and said, "And I am dying for a pedicure," before heading out, Zhu Li trailing behind. The entire time, the poor assistant was carrying his bags. "So I guess that leaves me and you, Naruto." "Well, me, you and Pabu and Mamoru," Bullen replied. Naruto stated, "Actually I was going to follow Korra." "Oh right, the promise and her supposed to be watching you," Bullen replied. Naruto blushed and said, yeah, those things." Bullen gasped as he realized the significance of the blush. "No way. You've got a crush on Korra," Bullen exclaimed in disbelief. Naruto blurted out, "What? No, I don't. Yeah, and I'm Mako." Bullen remarked mockingly. Knowing that he had been caught, Naruto let out a sigh. Naruto acknowledged, "Okay fine, maybe I got a bit of a crush on her." Mamoru gave a little yip. "Shut your hole, fox," Naruto exclaimed, earning the fox kid a raspberry. Bullen exclaimed, "Woo, you're lucky Mako isn't here." "Yeah, tell me about it, but you can't blame me, I mean look at her," Naruto said, gesturing to the departing avatar. Naruto smirked as he eyed Korra and remarked, "She's hot, strong, confident, sassy, and one heck of a hitter. Plus I always did have a thing for a girl with some color." "Yeah, she's pretty cool, but Mako's my brother and she's his girlfriend, so." "I get it Bullen, but don't worry, I respect the bro code, even if I don't consider Mako a bro," Naruto replied. Bullen said, "Thanks Naruto." Naruto grinned and said, "But if they break up, don't blame me if I make my move." Then he pursued Korra. With his hands in his pockets, Bullen remarked, "Well, then I guess it's just you and me Pabu." Varric suddenly materialized with his arm around Bullen's neck and said, "Say kid, have you ever seen Republic City at night?" "Sure, I live here, and where did you come from?" Varric inquired, "Have you really seen it?" Varric laughed as Bullen replied, no." After saying, "That's what I thought. Come on," Varric began dragging Bullen to his destination. Using Unalak's chief officer stated, "Tanrak and the rebels are holed up here in the hills outside of town. Leave them. My brother's no threat to us up there," Unalak replied. "Increase security around the spirit portal. Keeping it safe is our #1 priority." While putting his fist over his heart in a bow to Unalak, the chief officer said, "Yes sir." He then made his way to the door, but when he opened it, he saw Desna and a terrifying looking Eska wearing a marital gown from the Northern Water Tribe, her makeup dripping with tears. The chief officer, who was always afraid of the two, in fact, everyone was, moved past them and hurried as far away from the room as he could, avoiding the twins in particular. To see their father, Desna and Eska entered the room. Unalak gave his kids instructions, saying, "I need you two to go after the Avatar. She's the only one who can open the Northern Spirit Portal." "But father, you told Korra." Unalak interrupted his son, saying, "I told Korra what I thought she needed to hear." With a menacing glare, Eska declared, "I'll find her, she stole my husband." Unalak said gravely, "I need her alive." Eska let out a frustrated sigh at this. "Fine." Desna questioned, "And what of the blonde airbender?" Unalak glared and said, "Simple. Kill him, with Naruto and Korra." Korra told Naruto, you don't have to watch over me like I'm a kid." Naruto smirked and remarked, "What kid? All I see is a beautiful woman." Korra said, "Stop that." Naruto questioned, "Stop what?" Korra said, "Flirting with me, I'm with Mako." "I would never steal someone's girlfriend, no matter how cool they are," said Naruto. "Aha. So you admit that you feel like stealing me?" Korra pointed to Naruto and grinned triumphantly. According to Naruto, "No I didn't." Korra replied, "Yes you did." "No I didn't." "Yes, you did." "No I didn't." "Yes you did." "No I didn't." With her arms crossed and a defeated, ticked expression on her face, Korra said, "Yes you, oh forget it. You're weird." Naruto grinned and said, "And you're sexy." Korra blushed. "Stop that." Korra yelled. Then, with a sly smile on his face, Naruto leaned in close to her, making Korra uneasy and slightly aroused. Naruto remarked, "You can't stop me from speaking the truth." Korra made the decision to glare at him in the hopes that he would back off. "I see it in your eyes." Korra continued to glare at him and asked, "What are you talking about?" Naruto shocked Korra and made her blush red by saying, "If it wasn't for Mr. Personality then you would want to kiss me right now." Korra yelled, "Shut up, and struck him in the arm. As they walked forward, Naruto rubbed his arm and said, "Ow, sorry, I was just joking." Korra was shocked when Naruto blushed and said, "Well, I wasn't joking about your vanity. Why did I tell her that?" Korra said, "Vanity? Me? Please, does this look like someone who looks good?" Because she was insecure about her appearance. "Well, to me, of course." Naruto's statement startled Korra once more, causing her to flush. "I mean, personally, I don't like girly girls or daffodils. I like girls who hit hard and got a strong, confident and sassy personality." Korra blushed even more and asked, "Is that so?" Korra stopped and turned to face Naruto as she blushed even more when he said, "Yeah, I mean, you're awesome, and you're the most beautiful girl I've ever seen. So you like me only for my looks?" As he gazed at Korra with his brilliant cerulean eyes, Naruto said earnestly, "No, that's just jumping to conclusions. What I'm saying is I think you're the most beautiful girl I've ever seen, but I don't just think that your looks are beautiful, but I also think that your personality and everything else on the inside of you is beautiful." As Korra looked into Naruto's eyes, she couldn't help but flush. Korra took a small step back, but something sharp stabbed him in the back. "Ow?" Naruto inquired. "Are you okay?" "Yeah, I am." "Whoa?" Korra had just realized that a conveniently positioned Cupid statue had prodded her with a love arrow. Naruto questioned, "What? Is something wrong?" Standing in front of the Cupid statue, Korra said, No, everything's fine." The last thing she wants is for Naruto to see what prodded her so he can make fun of her. Korra questioned, "So, you really think that way?" Korra blushed when Naruto honestly said, "From the moment I saw you." The two began to lean in after staring at one another, but Naga's bark at something in front of them startled them out of their reverie. The Water Tribe Peace Marchers caught the blonde devil and Avatar's attention. Korra said, "There they are," as she approached her fellow tribeswoman. Naruto gave Naga a head pat after glancing at her. Naruto received a lick and bark from Naga after saying, "Good dog. You probably saved us from having a big spout and mostly me from most likely having Mako go bad cop on me." Then Mamoru gave Naruto a yip. Naruto told the fox kid, "I don't know what happened. It's like my brain jacked my mouth and spoke everything I was thinking." Naruto saw Mamoru's sly smile and said, "This has never happened before." "What?" Mamoru simply yelled something naively. As he began to approach the southern water tribesman, Naruto said, "No way, that face says nothing." Naga trailed behind him. Korra's polar bear dog approached her and she said, "Come on, Naga." Korra offered Naruto her hand as she leapt on top of Naga. Naruto said, "This isn't my job, water princess. They need you, not me." Korra grinned sympathetically. Mako hadn't really been doing that for a while, but Naruto understood her and told her what she needed to hear. Well, he had, but he wasn't very skilled at it. Naruto remained on the sidewalk and kept a close but safe distance from Korra as she took the lead in the Southern Water Tribe Peace March. Later that evening, the Southern Water Tribe Peace March continued late into the night. Korra was leading the pack, according to media coverage of the event. While he was walking along the sidewalk, Naruto kept a safe distance from Korra. Because they could see that Korra was not assisting them with their current situation, people continued to jeer at her. It didn't sit well with Naruto, so he couldn't help but glare at those who were jeering Korra. Idiots, as if they would know how to handle her predicament. It's difficult to maintain neutrality and work toward peace, not just for one individual but for the entire world, Naruto reasoned. A water tribesman hurled a fruit at Korra, causing it to bounce off her head and strike her hard in the head. "You stink!" he cried. When the blonde abruptly elbowed the man in the crick of his neck, knocking him unconscious and causing him to fall to the ground, Naruto's eyes widened and then narrowed with rage. Everyone gasped as they stared at the fallen man, and some of them turned to stare at Naruto, the blonde with his hands in his pockets and a serious expression on his face as the young man with the whiskers left. While strolling, Naruto noticed a destitute mother pleading with her child. The young boy was forced to hide behind his mother when Naruto stopped in front of them. After reaching into his bag and extracting 500,000 yuan, Naruto handed it to the mother and turned to leave. After giving the money a startled glance, the mother grinned and shed happy tears. As the blonde waved back at the mother, she exclaimed, "Thank you," to Naruto. After witnessing the entire incident, Korra couldn't help but smile at Naruto for his actions. He is kind and supportive of everyone, even those he doesn't know. Korra smiled and thought, "You're a good man, Naruto. Who cares what those posters say?" Alongside Mako, when Mako heard Aken being crushed while on patrol, he turned to see two red-clad men sprinting around the corner. Mako began to chase after them, shouting, "Hey! Stop, Republic City Police!" One of them spun around and pressed the trigger button while holding a trigger in his hand. Abruptly, the nearby building exploded. Mako was on the verge of being burned when the firebender used his firebending abilities to push the fire away from him. During the peace march, everyone stared at the buildings in shock as they exploded from within. Oh, Naruto thought, this can't be good. How is any of this good? Huh? Naruto exclaimed as he glanced around in disbelief. What the devil? Have I heard anything from anyone? Alongside Mako, one of the group's firebenders batted the fire away as Mako pursued the bombers and began using his firebending against them, but Mako got a good hit on him, causing the firebender to fall to the ground and drop the trigger. The bombers then drove off, and the firebender hurried to the getaway vehicle. Mako reached for the triggering mechanism and took a look at it. What on earth were they trying to accomplish? Mako pondered. During the peace march, Mako ran up to Korra as she attempted to put out the fire that was spreading throughout the building using her waterbending abilities. Korra told Mako, the Northern Water Tribe is out of control. I saw a firebender running away from the blast. The North might not be responsible for this, said Mako. Korra shot back, of course they're responsible. Who else would it be? Naruto hurried to the two as the fire engines arrived. Mako asked the blonde, do you know anything about this? Asking a criminal who was on your side is always preferable, especially if you have the ability to spot lies like Mako does. As he considered the cause of this, Naruto cupped his own chin and gazed up at the fire. Naruto remarked, maybe, but it's just a hunch. Naruto saw a small girl, terrified and alone, close to the flaming structure. She was most likely separated from her mother because everyone had fled. Abruptly, there was an explosion from the building, and the young girl was directly in the path of the fire. After hurriedly handing Mako his bag, Naruto used his amazing airbending abilities to send wind to his feet and run straight at the girl at breakneck speed. He then stopped in front of the young girl and raised his arms in the air, creating a huge plume of air that sent the fire skyward. Naruto turned to the girl to see if she was all right after they were safe. Naruto said, "Hey, kid, where's your mother?" The young girl exclaimed, "My dolly." When she noticed her doll on the ground, another explosion happened as she reached for it, forcing Naruto to seize the girl and use his airbending abilities to leap far from the blast, sparing both him and the young girl. As Naruto floated near the group of members of the Southern Water Tribe, everyone stared at him in disbelief. Sarah, the young girl's mother, yelled as Naruto and her daughter touched down. "Mommy!" the young child exclaimed as she ran to embrace her mother, who happily returned the hug. The mother sobbed happy tears and said, "I'm so glad you're okay." The girl said, "But mommy, my dolly," before turning around to see Naruto holding her doll in his hands after hearing a whistling sound. The girl joyfully cried out the name of her doll, "Mrs. Pretty," as Naruto approached her and handed her to the young child. The girl hugged her doll tightly and said, "Thank you, mister." Naruto remarked, "No problem, kid. We don't have enough hands here," exclaimed one of the firemen. When Naruto turned around, he saw that the firefighters were struggling with the hoses because half of them were helping to move injured bystanders away from the fire while the other half held whatever hoses they could. When Naruto turned to look around, he saw that the people holding the cameras were staring at him with shocked expressions on their faces. As he hurried over to the fire engines, Naruto remarked, "Well, the secret's out anyway." "We're having too much trouble here," exclaimed a firefighter. "This sucks," exclaimed someone else. The hoses abruptly began to rise by themselves. "What's going on?" "Airbending at its finest," exclaimed Naruto. As Naruto used his airbending to control those hoses, everyone stared at him in disbelief. "I'm going to need you guys to hold these bad boys though, I mean I can't do everything on my own," said Naruto. As soon as they recovered from their shock, the firefighters went to help Naruto. Mako and Korra gazed at Naruto in awe and surprise. Mako stated, "I don't believe it." Korra remarked, "He's incredible." Korra turned red with shame when Naruto said, "Hey Water Princess, I'm flattered, but I can't be the only bender here." Mako glared at Naruto after saying, "And besides Scowlboy's right there." All of the building's fires had been put out by the firefighters with the assistance of Korra and Naruto. After everything was finished, Naruto moved in the direction of Mako and Korra. Naruto sarcastically remarked, "Well, this was an interesting peace march." Korra and Mako gave him irritated looks. With his arms crossed and an irritated expression on his face, Naruto said, "Oh, sorry for thinking positively. Look, everyone's alive. Korra's earned some respect from assisting in ending the fire, and now we might have just what we need to convince President Raiko to help out the cause," Naruto replied. "Naruto, I know you're just trying to make the best of a bad situation, but..." Naruto put his hand on her shoulder and made her look at him while saying her name, Korra. Naruto told her, "Just smile." His own smile startled her. Naruto continued to smile and said, I don't like seeing you this way. So smile. Korra gave him a startled look before blushing and grinning at him. Mako was shocked as he gazed at the two, and he began to feel worried and envious. Naruto remarked, "Uh-oh," as he saw reporters and paparazzi hurrying in their direction. Naruto was about to walk away when Korra grabbed his arm. "Well, I'm gone." "Oh no you don't, I'm supposed to be watching you," Korra replied. "Please let me go, the last thing I need is the paparazzi on me," Naruto pleaded. "On you for what? You just helped save some lives," Korra replied. "Yeah, with airbending, like that isn't going to earn me some questions, I got to go." Mako said, "Too late." After that, the three were surrounded by paparazzi, who began questioning Naruto. "Who are you? What is your name? How skilled are you with airbending? If you're an airbender, how come you haven't come out to the public before? Are you in any way related to Avatar Aang and his descendants? Are there more like you in the world besides Tenzin and his family?" The last thing Naruto needs is the media focusing on him, so he was looking for a way out of this predicament. Naruto took his bag from Mako and began dragging Korra away, saying, "I'd love to answer your questions, but Avatar Korra and I have to see President Raiko." Korra stated, "Our appointment isn't until tomorrow." Naruto sarcastically remarked, "Speak a little louder." "I don't think they heard you." Then Naruto whistled, causing Naga to rush towards them. Naruto grabbed Korra's bridal style, tossed her over Naga, and then leapt up on her. Naga barked at Naruto when he said, "Let's go girl." Before the polar bear dog and her riders departed, Naga began to walk away while the photographers continued to snap photos and pose questions. In the hopes that Naruto wouldn't try anything with Korra, Mako simply watched as his girlfriend departed with the young blonde criminal. Korra said, "Okay. Where are you taking me?" Naruto smirked and punched him in the arm, saying, "Hey, you're the one driving." As Naruto put it, "Ow, okay, I deserved that." Korra said, "Anyway, where are we going?" Naruto put on his contemplative expression before grinning. Naruto said, "Wanna get some ramen?" Korra merely smiled before guiding Naga to the noodle shop. At the ramen shop later Naruto said, "Oi, may I have another, please?" Korra was shocked to see that Naruto was eating his 13th bowl after finishing his 12th. While slurping his noodles, Naruto paused when he saw Korra's startled expression. "What?" Naruto asked, blinking his eyes at her. Korra told Naruto, "Oh, it's nothing, it's just, well, you're on your 13th bowl," while he gulped down the remainder of his noodles. "And, you started your first one 3 minutes ago," Korra replied. Naruto grinned proudly and said, "I'm a man who loves ramen. I mean who doesn't?" Korra grinned and said, "Well I sure do, but seriously, you eat like your life depended on it." As he finished his bowl, Naruto remarked, "It can't be helped for me. So, you and Scowl Boy? Gotta tell ya, I did not expect that when Bolin told me." Korra replied, "Yeah, well, he cares for me and I care for him." However, Naruto detected a hint of skepticism in her tone. "Something up?" inquired Naruto. "What? No, we're fine, we haven't been fighting," Korra replied. "You know it doesn't take a criminal genius like me to know when someone is lying," Naruto replied. Korra let out a defeated sigh. "Fine, you win. Mako and I have had a few rough patches in our lives at the moment," Korra replied. Naruto finished his bowl and received another, asking, "Is that so? Have you decided on talking about it?" "I'm telling you. I mean to him, plus I'm not a couples counselor," Naruto replied. Korra replied, "Oh, well, I don't think that'll happen." As he gulped some noodles, Naruto uttered the words, "Then end it." "What?" Korra cried in disbelief. "Have you guys been fighting more than you have been showing each other love?" asked Naruto. "No. Well, yes." Korra offered a dejected sigh. "And you two have been trying to find the bright side of your relationship?" replied Naruto. "No," Naruto finished his bowl and remarked, "then unless the both of you give it time and patience and try to work it out, then it won't work." Korra questioned, "Do you think we'll work it out?" "I can't answer that, Korra. The answer lies on the path that you and Mako decide to take," Naruto replied. Korra simply cast a dejected glance at her bowl of ramen. Naruto chose to take Korra somewhere else because he didn't want to see her in this state. Naruto grinned and remarked, "Hey, you look like you could use a soda float." Korra questioned, "You really think that'll make me happy?" As he paid for his bowls and Korra's, Naruto remarked, "Actually I think how we're getting to the place that sells them is going to bring you joy." Grabbing Korra's hand, Naruto led her outside to meet Mamoru and Naga. After grabbing his bag, Naruto placed Mamoru inside and tied it to Naga's saddle. The two animals and Korra gave Naruto a perplexed look when he said, "Try to keep up, Naga." After picking Korra up bridal style, Naruto launched himself into the air and began to fly toward the store, while Naga chased after them. Korra encircled Naruto's neck with her arms while screaming. Naruto assured them, "Don't worry, I won't let you fall." Korra glanced up and saw that he was grinning at her, her gaze fixed on his glistening cerulean eyes. Naruto said, "I promise." Korra couldn't resist giving him a smile. Korra was astounded by the beauty and height of the entire city when she looked down. "Wow, it's beautiful." "Yeah, cities always do at this height," Naruto replied. As Korra kept her gaze on the city, she glanced up at Naruto, who was staring straight ahead, and noticed that he appeared attractive in the moonlight. Naruto flew down towards the shop after a long journey, landed softly on his own 2 feet, and let Korra down as Naga approached them. Korra exclaimed in awe, "That was amazing. I can't believe how incredible your bending is." Naruto shrugged and said, "Yeah, pretty amazing." As he and Korra entered the restaurant, Naruto said, "Well, let's get us some soda floats." After enjoying some soda floats together, Naruto burped out of nowhere. Naruto blushed and apologized, "Sorry, I know that was rude." Then Korra burped. Naruto grinned and said, "But that was awesome." Korra blushed. Naruto belched loudly and said, "Beat this." Korra gave a big, loud belch after grinning. Naruto gave her a sly smile before inhaling and letting out a loud burp that shook their soda float glasses and reverberated throughout the room. As everyone stared at them in disgust, Naruto and Korra exchanged glances and burst out laughing. The two departed after Naruto paid for their drinks, at which point he leapt on Naga. With a raised eyebrow, Korra asked, "Wait, you're driving Naga?" Naruto scratched Naga behind the ears and remarked, "Driving's for cars. I'd say I'm more along the lines of leading Naga. Chan." Korra questioned, "Naga? Chan? What does Chan mean?" "I don't know. I just use that at the end of the name of girls that I like. It's basically like an honorific that displays familiarity, ya know?" Naruto clarified. Korra gave Naruto a startled blink. Korra remarked, "You're smarter than you look." Naruto said, "Whatever, just hop on." With a simple shrug, Korra leapt onto Naga and sat behind Naruto. After that, Naruto began guiding Naga to their next stop. Korra questioned, "So, where are you leading Naga then?" Naruto grinned and said, "You'll see, afterwards, in the park." Near the park's little lake, Naruto had halted Naga. Korra questioned, "What are we doing here?" After leaping off Naga, Naruto reached out to Korra. According to Naruto, "I'll show you." As Naruto assisted Korra in descending from Naga and guiding her toward the small lake, Korra took his hand. "So what now?" inquired Korra. Naruto looked at her and said, "Let me ask you a question." Korra raised an eyebrow at him. Naruto inquired, "Have you ever danced on air before?" "Huh?" inquired Korra. Korra screamed a little as Naruto grabbed her by the waist and leapt directly toward the lake, but they then began to float slightly over it. Korra glared and said, "You jerk, you scared me." Korra grinned as Naruto smirked and said, "Sorry, but you got to admit, this is something else to you, isn't it?" Naruto took Korra's hand and began using his airbending to move both of them in soothing swaying motions. Korra laughed while dancing a little over the water with Naruto. Naruto asked, "Having fun?" And Korra nodded. Korra said, "Yeah, but why the park?" Naruto remarked, "It's a nice place to take someone." Korra couldn't argue against that reasoning. "You really know how to show someone a good time," Korra replied. Naruto shrugged his shoulder and said, "I aim to please." "So, have you ever shown others girls a good time like this?" Korra inquired. Naruto smirked and asked, "Why are you asking?" Naruto laughed when Korra said, "Well, it's just." Naruto's laughter made Korra flush, so she kicked his ankle. Naruto remarked, "Ow, you're mean sometimes, you know that?" Korra narrowed her eyes at him and said, "Well, sorry if I don't like your responses." Naruto smiled and said, "It's just a joke." Korra averted her gaze from Naruto. Naruto remarked, "I don't blame you, ya know." Korra questioned, "And why's that?" "Being a mediator can be a pain at times." Naruto shrugged his shoulders. Korra questioned, "And how would you know?" At that moment, Naruto's expression was thoughtful. "I don't know. For some reason I kind of understand. I mean, dealing with people at odds with each other, especially at a time of war, isn't something easy to deal with," Naruto replied. "You don't understand what exactly I have to go through," Korra replied. "Well, maybe I don't have to. I just know that it's complicated," Naruto replied. Korra asked, "You don't think I can do it?" "I'm not saying that." I have full trust in you, Korra, but sometimes it's okay to ask for a little help, Naruto replied. Korra questioned, what's that supposed to mean? It means that I'm trying to tell you that I'm here for you whenever you need me. So don't hesitate, Naruto replied with a grin. Naruto's words caused Korra to flush. She was astounded that he believed in her so much and that he was now there for her in times of need. Naruto and Korra began to lean in closer, but Naga's bark brought them back to the present. Naruto said, You ready to go? Korra responded with a nod. Then Naruto brought Korra and him over to Naga. Then, grinning, Naruto and Korra gazed up at the full moon. Korra said, Beautiful, isn't it? Naruto replied, Yeah. Korra raised an eyebrow at Naruto after a short while. Naruto said, Something I can help you with? It's just I expected you to say, but it's not as beautiful as you, or something, Korra replied. Naruto grinned and said, Well, I thought it, but I didn't know that you wanted me to say it out loud. Well, no, I didn't, I just thought that maybe. Still grinning and crossing his arms, Naruto remarked, Oh, so you want me to be a little cheesy? Korra exclaimed, Just hop on Naga. As she leapt on top of her best friend, Naruto following. As Naga began to leave, Korra remarked, I think we can call it a night. Naruto smiled and said, It's been a nice one, right? Korra blushed and grinned, saying, Well, minus the fact a building blew up, yeah, it's been nice. So Water Princess, you know where Mamoru and I can sleep for the night, replied Naruto. Korra said, You can bunk with me. Naruto grinned and said, Whoa, Water Princess, I like your forwardness, but maybe we should slow down a bit. Oh, shut up. I meant that you could come with me to Air Temple Island. They have spare rooms there, Korra replied. Naruto inquired, What's the rent? It's free. Naruto grinned and said, I'll take it. Korra grinned back. At City Hall on the following day, Varrick, Korra, and Naruto ascended the City Hall stairs. Naruto asked Varrick, So you went easy on Bolin, right? Oh, don't worry. The kid's a natural. In fact, I think I just found his true calling, Varrick replied. What's that? Korra said, Can we please focus? Then, as they arrived at the top of the stairs, Korra sighed. Korra remarked, I hope President Raiko will listen to us. Don't worry. I was a big contributor to his election campaign. Varrick replied. Korra stopped Naruto as the three were about to enter, saying, Well, him and the other guy. Got to head your bets. Korra said, Maybe it's best if you stay here. Naruto asked, What? Will I be a stepping stone in your path? No, then no worries. Besides, I helped this city last night, so I think the president will be fine with me in his office as long as you're there, Naruto replied. Varrick began pushing the two teenagers inside and exclaimed, The kid's right, now let's go, instead. Within the president's office, President Raiko and his assistants welcomed Korra, Naruto, and Varrick into his office. Korra said to President Raiko, Hello, Mr. President. The two then approached one another and shook hands. Sir, the Southern Water Tribe. As he and Korra turned to face the camera, President Raiko said, Just a second. Keep smiling. Korra was a little perplexed and uneasy, but Varrick touched a spot on her back with his finger, causing her to smile broadly as the camera flashed a picture. Naruto said, You have got to teach me that move. At Naruto's request, Varrick grinned. The four of them then took a seat, with Naruto and Varrick on a couch next to the two and Raiko across from Korra. Now, how can I help the Avatar and my most generous supporter and of course, the newly made hero, the blonde devil, said Raiko. Naruto scratched the back of his head and grinned nervously, saying, I see you recognized me. Well, to be fair, I've never heard of someone with whisker. Like birthmarks like yours before, Raiko replied. Fair enough. Getting right to the point, Korra stated, Sir, Unalak's troops have invaded the south. We need you to send the united forces to help. That's it? No clever wordplay? I guess I'll have to intervene once more, Naruto thought. I'm very concerned by what's happening down there, but I don't think it's the Republic's place to interfere with internal Water Tribe manners, Raiko responded. Unalak isn't even the rightful ruler of the Water Tribe. He lied his way onto the northern throne, Korra countered. Mr. President, the Republic is already involved in this conflict. The North attacked our cultural center last night, Varrick continued. Believe me, we are doing everything we can to bring the people responsible to justice, Raiko responded. The people responsible? Who else would it be, but the Northerners? Korra replied. Well, a couple of people, like the triads, extremists and racists, Naruto replied. Korra narrowed her eyes at the blonde and said, Naruto, not helping. Everyone stared at Naruto in confusion as he said, "My apologies, but if I could step in. I think we're going about this all wrong. We're talking about what the next, but we're not talking about what's happening in the city. Look, we can go about saying who did it and negotiate on what to do, but we're forgetting about the people." Varric was right about the conflict reaching Republic City, but it wasn't started by the damage done to the cultural center. We have people who immigrated from both the North and South tribes here along with those of North and South descent, so we already had conflict here to start with. Now that the cultural center has been attacked, everyone's suspicions lie upon the North, which will increase conflicts, including riots, which would not only look bad for the city and rest of the population, but also on you, President Raiko. Naruto clarified. Varric concurred, saying, "The kid's right, Mr. President." Varric was quite pleased with Naruto's astute reaction. "I see what you're doing, blonde devil, but I just can't send in troops to assist the South. It will make the North think I am favoring the South over them." Raiko countered. "True, but doing nothing to assist anyone will earn you even more negative opinions from both tribes." Naruto replied. Naruto was correct, even though Raiko hated to acknowledge it. "Now I'm not saying that you should send in the troops, but no one said delivering supplies would get people to feel distasteful towards you. The North is already supplied, but the South is a different story. The North had already taken their supplies before the war even started. Supplying them will earn you credibility with the South, and the North will not see it as much of a threat." Naruto replied. "True, but what do you think I should supply them with?" replied Raiko. "Well, food and other provisions for one. In fact, Varric has been developing a new line of camo gear," Naruto replied. I have, perfect for snowy weather," exclaimed Varric. "I see. All right, I understand and agree. All right, I'll assist the South in supplying them with the necessities." Raiko concurred. Naruto bowed and remarked, "That's all we wanted, Mr. President." Korra gazed at Naruto in amazement at his skill at negotiating. "I shall also work with Unalaq for a diplomatic solution," Raiko stated. "Understood, Mr. President. That will help with earning some of the trust with the North as well," Naruto replied. Raiko stood up and declared, "This meeting is over." After leaving the office, Naruto, Korra, and Varric went outside the structure. "Oh, Mr. President, do you mind if I ask you a little bit of a personal favor?" Naruto replied. Raiko declared, "I shall pardon you for your past crimes." "Thank you, Mr. President." Naruto bowed his thanks to the president as he departed with Varric and Korra. Naruto remarked, "Well, that went way better than I expected." Then Varric patted Naruto on the shoulder and abruptly put his arm around his neck. "Naruto, my boy, you just not only helped the South, but my business as well. I could just adopt you," Varric grinned. Still unsatisfied, Korra remarked, "I just still wish that we could send troops to the South to help." "Well, you can't think of everything as a fight. You got to take baby steps," Naruto replied. "I mean, I want to see your uncle lose to Korra, but we need to take time and think things over. It's not easy to persuade people, even when they're on your side." "The kid's right, and at least the South will get something out of this," Varric concurred. Korra remarked, "I guess you guys are right." After that, the three managed to exit the building. "I'm going to go see Mako." Naruto said, "All right. Tell No Fun Jr. I said hi." Korra giggled and covered her mouth with her hand. Then, to her surprise, she gave Naruto a hug. Korra thanked the blonde, saying, "Thank you." Grinning, Naruto gave the hug back. Naruto replied, "No problem." After that, Korra broke away from him and departed, leaving Varric and Naruto by themselves. With a smile on his face, Varric abruptly nudged Naruto's arm as he watched her retreating form. According to Varric, "Not bad, Romeo." Naruto remarked, "What? She's with Mr. Personality, remember?" "Yes, but if you ask me, they're on a trip to Splitsville, so you just might get your dream girl after all. You just need to hang in there." "No, come on," Varric exclaimed as he began guiding Naruto to his ship. At Varric's ship later, "So we'll still be helping the South even though we're not sending troops to them," Bullen stated. Naruto remarked, "Got to take it slow, ya know?" Bullen questioned, "And Korra's okay with this?" "From what I can tell, yes and no, she's happy that we're sending supplies, but she's impatient and worried about not sending the United Forces to assist her people, and I can see why, since the last thing anyone wants is to see their kind hurt, even when they're supposed to be the neutral mediator. She'll probably be soon to tell us about not waiting any longer and to send the troops out now," said Naruto. Blindfolded, Varric said, "You should listen to the kid. He knows how everyone thinks just by looking them in the eye." It's spooky, as he prepared to shoot an arrow from his bow. The arrow sped toward the target as he fired it, nearly striking Asami as he approached the cockpit with Korra. Korra was fortunate to pull her out of the arrow's range, and Varric was fortunate to hit the target. Not exactly in the bull's eye, but that didn't really bother him. When Varric removed his blindfold, Asami and Korra were staring at him. Varric turned to Bolin after saying, "Oh hello." Varric said, "See, I told you I can do it." Bolin said, "Sorry I ever doubted you." "Yeah, but not entirely, I suppose," Naruto thought to himself as he observed the other arrows that had missed their target scattering close to it. With a serious expression, Korra stated, "We need those troops now. We can't wait for the president to act." Naruto grinned and said, "See, I told ya." Bolin remarked, "You know her so well." Korra simply arched an eyebrow, perplexed by the topic of conversation between the two. "Anyway, I have my own problems as well. My company's about to go under. I need to find a way to make some sales," Asami replied. With Varric's bow in her hands, Zhu Li walked off with Naruto, who said, "I'll get the peppers." Asami and Korra were perplexed by this. "What the kid means is that he's getting the essentials along with Zhu Li for me to enter my idea storm," Varric replied. Zhu Li brought in a pole, upset and something to tie Varric to the pole, while Naruto brought over a plate of red peppers and said, "Don't ask, just watch. You're about to get an inside look at how Varric Industries stays at the forefront of imagination, innovation or imagivation." "That's trademarked, pal," said Varric. Varric simply took one of the peppers from the plate that Naruto held out to him. Varric's face turned red as he ate the pepper and remarked, "Brainwork requires increased circulation." "Let's do this," exclaimed Varric. Varric leapt onto the pull up bar, clipped his harness to the bar, and hung upside down after Zhu Li had secured ankle harnesses to his ankles. Zhu Li was getting ready to write down the ideas when Varric said, "Okay, here come the ideas. Fast and furious. Pink. Mint. Lemon. Tea. Radio. For pets. Hand shoes." As blood rushed to half of his face, Varric uttered a series of random words. "Hold on a tick. We don't need the president to go to the south. We just need the troops. Let's go straight to them. If there's one thing I know about troops, it's that they love fighting." Naruto grinned mischievously and scratched his chin, recalling all the fights he had engaged in the past. "Fighting is fun." "I know General Iroh. He'll be willing to help us," Korra replied. "A man on the inside. Perfect. And you need to sell some mecha tanks. I know some people who need them. We'll ship them south." Korra grinned and said, "Perfect, you'll be making money for your company and you'll be helping to defeat Unalak." "It's true. If you can't make money during a war, you just can't flat out make money," said Varric. Asami smiled and said, "I'm willing to try if you are, but it's dangerous on the seas right now." Varric grinned broadly and exclaimed, "It'll be crazy. Risky. But I love crazy. Risky." Naruto grinned and said, "You're not the only one." Varric yelled, "End storm," as he flipped off the bar and landed like a cat. As Zhu Li nodded and walked away, Varric commanded, "Zhu Li, get those ideas to research and development. I want prototypes by next week." "I don't understand why it's so hard to get Republic City to support the South," Korra replied. "Well, that's an easy one. It's called the United Republic. All ethnicity from all nations come here and unite as one. If there's any sign of favoritism, then that'll cause some problems within the city. You're not the only one who is supposed to be expected to remain neutral, Korra," Naruto replied. Korra said, "I guess you're right. I'm already working on that. As soon as people see this," Varric said, pointing to his mover. "In any case, you don't have to worry about that." Naruto raised an eyebrow and asked, "A movie projector?" Varric grinned broadly and exclaimed, a movie projector, I like it. It sounds way better than a mover." Asami, Korra, and Bolin gazed at him and asked, "How'd you come up with that?" As he considered it, Naruto cupped his chin. "I don't know, it just came to me." Naruto shrugged his shoulders into a position. "Anyway, with this movie projector, I'm already liking the name. People will be lining up to fight Unalak." Zhu Li. "Do the thing," Varric replied. Then Zhu Li switched on the projector and a film of soldiers from the Northern Water Tribe was shown. While Naruto raised an eyebrow at it, Korra gazed at it in astonishment. Bolin told the two, "Don't freak out, it's not real." They all watched the film, and Varric remarked, "I had a film crew document the entire northern invasion." Naruto smiled and complimented Varric, saying, "Smart Varric." Varric crossed his arms and grinned smugly, saying, "I know." Bolin and Naruto were suddenly terrified when they saw an image of Eska staring at the film crew in bewilderment. Bolin yelled, "No," as he shielded himself from the image, and Naruto winced and clenched his teeth in disgust. Feeling foolish, Bullen said. Sorry, I keep doing that. Naruto stated, looking exhausted, and now I'm scarred for life. We're going to cut this footage together with scenes of our superstar Bullen here, who'll be playing a Southern Water Tribe hero, battling the evil Unalak. Nobody will root for the North after they see the adventures of Nuktuk. Hero of the South, Varrick said, pointing to Bullen, who flexed his biceps and assumed a heroic pose. Bullen said, I'm Nuktuk. What do you think? With a lifeless expression, Naruto remarked, just don't forget your friends, family and the little people. At the Temple of Southern Air, Milo loved the lemur too much and rewarded him for disobeying Tenzin, who was preoccupied with teaching his son how to tame and train the animal. Bumi yelled, Hey Tenzin! We got mail. As he and his pet lemur Poki made their way to the rest of the family with Tenzin in tow, Milo exclaimed, Yay! Mail! Come on Poki. Tenzin questioned, What's the message say? Everyone was startled when Bumi gasped, Let's see, it's from Republic City. Oh no, this is awful. Kya questioned, What is it? They misspelled air in Southern Air Temple. That's pretty sloppy if you ask me, Bumi replied. Forget about the typo and just read the message Bumi, Tenzin replied. Let's see. Dear Southern Air Temple, we feel that we needed to inform you that at the incident of the Cultural Center attack we have discovered, oh my goodness. They misspelled air twice. Tenzin exclaimed, Would you please ignore the typos? Holding the letter in one hand and the pictures in the other, Bumi said, Sorry, anyway, it says something about a new airbender, they even sent pictures. Tenzin grabbed the letter and exclaimed, What? In shock. Bumi showed everyone images of a blonde using airbending, assisting with the incident, and a few with Korra. Look, here are the pictures. Although he doesn't look like your regular airbender. They said he was a criminal named Naruto the Blonde Devil, but he was officially pardoned after a meeting with the president of Republic City and he's friends with Korra, so he's on our side, was his statement. Staring at Naruto's photo, Tenzin said incredulously, I don't believe it. Everyone turned to stare at Jinora when she said, He's kind of cute. I mean, he looks kind of suspicious. I call dibs. Ikki exclaimed, narrowing her eyes as Jinora gave her a dully look. Tenzin sighed and said, Oh dear. Although, Tenzin continued, examining a photograph of Korra and Naruto. To think that there could be more airbenders out there besides us. You shouldn't get your hopes up, Tenzin. Bumi just said that he was a criminal, so you should be wary, Kya responded. Tenzin looked at the photos and said, Yes, I know, but it seems that he is well acquainted with Korra, so there might not be much to worry about. Later, on the boat of General Iroh, Korra and Naruto made their way to General Iroh's boat. You know you don't have to follow me everywhere, Korra replied. Naruto declared, I made a promise and I'm not going back on it. Besides, hanging out with Varrick for too long can affect a man negatively. Korra smirked and teased, glad to see you don't worship him so strongly. Naruto glared slightly and remarked, I don't worship him, I respect him. Korra and Naruto went to the ship's main deck to meet General Iroh after locating it. Korra, hello, and I see you brought the new airbender, Iroh replied. Naruto held out his hand and introduced himself as Naruto. Iroh grinned and said, It's nice to officially meet you, blonde devil. So you know who I am. May I ask why you are okay with me being in your presence? Replied Naruto. You helped save lives and it seems you are well acquainted with Avatar Korra, so I have nothing to fear, Iroh replied. Korra smirked and crossed her arms, teasing, how can anyone fear someone who looks like him? Naruto countered, hey, I can be menacing when I want to be. Korra said, thank you for seeing me, General Iroh. Naruto gave her a fierce look for not paying attention. Iroh smiled and asked, what can I do? The South needs military support before Unalak wipes them out completely, but the president is refusing to give the order. So I decided to come to you directly, said Korra. Then, in a contemplative position, General Iroh cupped his chin. I see. Well, suppose I were to take the fleet south on some routine training maneuvers and let's say we were to accidentally run into a hostile northern blockade. We would have no choice but to defend ourselves, Iroh replied. I guess you wouldn't. Korra grinned. It is the liberty of everyone to defend themselves, said Naruto. Then Naruto detected a familiar scent. Oh. Korra turned to the blonde and asked, what's wrong? Korra and Iroh turned to face President Raiko as Naruto turned to the door and said, we got company. Korra muttered, oh. As he approached them, Raiko asked, swapping old war stories? Iroh saluted his superior and said, Mr. President. With a stern expression, Raiko said, I hope you're not planning to take military action without an order from your commander-in-chief. Iroh responded, of course not, sir. Good, because if a single vessel leaves this harbor without my say-so you'll be court-martialed. Am I clear? Raiko said. Iroh said, crystal. Sir. Korra whispered to Naruto, can't you say something that'll convince him otherwise? Sadly no, the best I could do is stay silent since he would most likely threaten to erase my pardon. I'm afraid I can't say anything at this point. Naruto replied in a whisper. Raiko gave Korra a stern look and told him, your actions here are almost insurrectionary. The Avatar does not command the Republic's military. Don't go behind my back again. Korra put her hands on her hips, looking irritated. And you blonde devil, you. With a steely gaze and a severe expression on her face, Korra said, hey, leave him out of this. He had nothing to do with this, it was all my idea, so don't go accusing Naruto. He's just here because he has to stand by my side, so don't go blaming him. Korra had just stood up for her, and Naruto blushed. Raiko simply turned to face Iroh and said, Korra glared at Raiko as he departed with his aides, saying, as you were General Iroh. I hate that guy, exclaimed Korra. With a frustrated expression on his face, Naruto remarked, now you know why I dislike authority. Iroh apologized, saying, my hands are officially tied. Naruto grinned and excitedly punched his palm, saying, don't worry about, we'll still find a way to beat Unalaq, even if we have to go against the law. Korra said, no, bad Naruto, we're not doing that. Naruto said, his expression interesting, just say, no, next time. I'm not a dog. But you should talk to the Fire Lord. My mother and grandfather have always been good friends to the Avatar and the Southern Water Tribe. I'm sure they'll be willing to help. Iroh replied with an optimistic grin. Korra thanked the general, saying, thank you general. Then she saw that Naruto had a contemplative look on his face and was massaging his chin. What's wrong? I'm just wondering who snitched on us. I mean the president couldn't have just came strolling along and visit the general here without knowing what's up. I mean he didn't look surprised to see you here so he knew what we were up to. Naruto replied. Iroh remarked, he's got a point. The only thing I don't understand is who would snitch on us. The only ones who knew about it were Bolin, Asami, Varrick and Zhu Li. Bolin and Asami wouldn't rat out Korra because they're her good friends and they wouldn't go behind her back. Varrick wouldn't say a thing since he wants the same thing Korra wants, but with his main desire being to profit from it, and Zhu Li wouldn't because she's Varrick's assistant and wouldn't go behind his back, plus you couldn't even get her to talk unless you threatened Varrick's life. Naruto replied. Iroh pondered, then who else would have known about your plan? As Korra approached the door, Naruto saw the shocked expression on her face change to one of rage. She opened the door and slammed it behind her. Naruto remarked, I think Korra just found out. In a studio in reference to his movie attire, which included light blue shorts with fur lining, boots with fur lining, and a fur coat that exposed his torso with a necklace that featured two curved fangs in the middle, Bolin questioned, wouldn't I be cold wearing this outfit in the snow? He also held a fake club. Varrick crossed his arms and exclaimed, Bah, Nuktuk is never cold. Then Bolin spotted Ginger, a red-haired woman he had seen in the South Pole. Bolin grinned and said, ooh, hey, Ginger. Ginger turned like a diva, her hair bouncing, and walked beside Varrick. She wore a light blue skirt with fur lining that ended at her knees, boots, a water tribe necklace, black wrapping around her forearms, and a short light blue top with fur lining at the collar that exposed her stomach and had 3 separate feather-like furs tied to it. How about that, huh? He's referring to her hair. It's the latest product in my very manageable hairline. Die. Varrick laughed. We get some shots of her using it before Unalaq kidnaps her and I guarantee we sell 1 million cases week 1. Everyone turned to look at Korra as she entered on a horse and rode Naga. Korra jumped off Naga and headed to Bolin, saying, Bolin, I need you to watch Naga while I'm gone. Bolin inquired, where are you going? Fire Nation. I'm going to try and get them to help the South. Korra replied. Naruto abruptly sprinted into the room, accelerating with her airbending before stopping beside Korra. Naruto said, sorry I was late, but man is your polar bear dog fast. However, he quickly became aware of Bolin's attire. Feeling a little uneasy, Naruto asked, what the hell is that? As he bravely posed, Bolin exclaimed, it's my new outfit for the movie. I'm Nuktuk. With a smile, Bolin said, not bad, huh? After a brief period of silence and blinking, Naruto turned to face Varrick. Naruto inquired, you got any barf bags here? Bolin pouted and said, you're mean? Korra said, Varrick, I need a boat. Varrick inquired, what happened to General Iroh? Naruto remarked, someone snitched to the president. Bolin questioned, who? Naruto pointed to Korra with his thumb and said, ask her. Korra glared and remarked, I think it was Mako. With his arms crossed and a drab expression, Naruto remarked, Super Cop? Well, should have seen that coming. Bullen remarked, there's no way Mako would have told, right? He's a rookie who swore his duty to his superiors. I think it's pretty obvious that it's him. Naruto replied. Given that Naruto was probably correct about his brother, Bullen was depressed. Then Korra bolted from the building. Naruto remarked, Glairmeister better get a punch from Korra for this. However, he saw Bullen's expression. Naruto shrugged his shoulders and said, sorry dude, forgot he was your brother. Bullen remarked, it's cool. Just as Naruto turned to go, he noticed Mamoru emerge from his duffel bag, which was still fastened to Naga's saddle. Naruto inquired, have you been sleeping in there this entire time? Mamoru gave his blonde partner a yap. Yes. Naruto turned to Bullen and said, oh, Bullen, so you think. Bullen said, already on it, just go. Thanks. Naruto thanked the earthbender before racing after Korra, hoping that she wouldn't pound Mako's face and break his bones. At the police station later, when Korra saw her boyfriend, she glared at him and kicked the door to the room where Mako was stationed. Korra yelled, you ratted me out to the president, as she strode over to Mako. Naruto arrived in time to witness Korra traveling to Mako. Mako said, Korra, let me explain. Then he saw Naruto approaching them. Mako stood up and yelled, what is he doing here? While pointing at Naruto. With his hands in his pockets, Naruto said, sup Wonder Boy. When the three heard laughter, they turned to see two cocky detectives named Lu and Gang laughing uncontrollably at Naruto's moniker for Mako. Wonder Boy. Brilliant, exclaimed Gang, who was tall. Ignoring Tweedledee and Tweedledum over there. Why'd you rat us out? Grinned Naruto. Naruto, I got this, Korra exclaimed, stopping him in his tracks with a raised hand. Korra slammed one hand on the desk and put the other on her hip, demanding answers. Mako, tell me why my boyfriend stabbed me in the back, she said. Look, the President of the Republic asked me a direct question, Mako responded. Acting like a smartass once more, Naruto questioned, and staying silent wasn't an option? I got this, exclaimed Korra. Mako questioned, well, what was I supposed to do? You betrayed me and my family, Korra yelled. Then Korra abruptly kicked the desk, sending it in front of Chief Baifong's doors with a little extra airbending. At what he saw, Naruto whistled. Naruto thought, I always did like a woman with fire in her soul. A deep, low voice said, that's always been your type. Naruto looked around, but nothing was there, and it seemed like no one heard, as everyone was staring at Korra. What the devil? Is this something I'm thinking about? Naruto had this thought, but he quickly dismissed it and turned back to look at Korra and Mako. Enough! Exclaimed Mako. Look, I have a job to do. I can't constantly be worrying about keeping you from making another huge mistake. Naruto looked at Korra worriedly and thought, and now he's in the doghouse. Well, I have a job to do too. Only it seems like you're always standing in the way of me getting it done, Korra replied. Well, I guess if we're both putting our jobs first, maybe there's no room for our relationship, Mako yelled. Korra and Naruto stared at Mako in disbelief. Korra said, a little sad, so what? Are you breaking up with me? Mako remained silent for a moment before responding, not meeting her gaze. Mako turned to face her and said, yeah, I guess I am. Naruto turned to Korra after giving Mako a startled look. After a brief moment of sadness, Korra left the room, her eyes welling with tears. Naruto's face was filled with worry and concern as he gazed at the doors that had been opened. Naruto did want them to split up so he could have a chance with Korra, but he never wanted to witness Korra's sadness and tears, and now that he had witnessed them, he never wanted to see them again. Then Naruto turned and gave Mako a ferocious glare while clenching his fist and gritting his teeth. Even though Mako was a courageous man, he felt uneasy when he saw Naruto's irate expression. He now sensed a sinister and dangerous energy emanating from him. Naruto said, "You baka. What, idiot, what the hell is wrong with you?" exclaimed Naruto. "Hey, butt out, this was between me and Korra, it's our problem," Mako retorted. "Between your relationship, true, but not what's going down in the south. It's a war, Mako. People were counting for backup and you threw that hope out the window. What was I supposed to do? Not snitched. You not only betrayed your friend, but someone who was also your girlfriend at the time. You don't get it, I don't have to. I have a saying, those who go against their orders are scum, but those who abandon their friends are lower than scum." Mako glared at Naruto and screamed, "I don't want to hear any of that crap from you. You never worked with the law, so you don't understand it." "Oh, I understand it," But believe it or not, I understand war even better. Naruto glared back. War is hell, Mako. It's horrible for the soldiers, but it's even worse for those who live innocently on the place of battle. Do you even know what happens during this crap? People are killed, tortured, brainwashed and even raped. People are suffering over there. When war between two idiots happen and people are for it, then I would understand, but this war's outcome is the fate of people's freedom. People who were being pushed around and you were witness to it. All you could have done was kept silent, but instead you just squealed, which now means that there is no help coming to those people who need it. How the hell are you going to sleep at night knowing that because of you not keeping your mouth shut, a race is suffering and watching their fellow people getting harmed or even worse? Mako, now feeling guilty, looked at Naruto in disbelief. Mako gave one last glare and said, I was just doing my job. Naruto glared at him and said, and who here respects you for doing that? Naruto's reply causes Mako's eyes to slightly enlarge. Then, with a feeling of shame, Mako turned to face the ground. Naruto remarked, that's what I thought. After that, the blonde walked out of the room. As Naruto continued down the hallway, he became aware of Korra leaning against the wall close to the entrance. Oh. Korra. Naruto was now concerned that his and Mako's conversation would make her feel even more depressed and furious. I'm sorry if you heard all that. Korra said, it's fine. Then Korra turned to go, getting off the wall. Then Naruto followed her with a worried expression on his face. Lin's expression changed to one of shock as she witnessed the entire argument between Mako and Naruto. Lin asked Mako, would you mind telling me how this all began? Mako turned to her and said, I broke up with the Avatar. Chief Baifong crossed her arms and remarked, you got off easy. Lin grinned and remarked, you should have seen Air Temple Island when Tenzin broke up with me. Well, I still feel that it's worse for me, Mako replied. Lin questioned, why's that? Mako looked at the exposed entrance and said, I think I sent Korra into the arms of a criminal. Oh, that does sound pretty bad, Lin said. At the docks later. Naruto accompanied Korra to the docks, where she was given the boat by a Varric employee. Following the worker's departure, Korra sat with her feet hanging off the edge of the docks. Then Naruto passed her and took a seat beside her. As they gazed at the hazy ocean, neither of them spoke. Naruto turned to see that Korra was still crying. Naruto wanted to give her a hug, but he thought it wouldn't be beneficial. As he considered the best course of action, Naruto cast his gaze to the side. You know, you can tell me anything right now if you want. I'll listen, said Naruto. I just don't understand why he would betray me. I mean, my family along with the rest of the South are out there fighting a war and he ratted me out just because of a job, Korra said as she continued to cry. Well, that's one of the reasons why I don't like the law that much. It usually leads to crap like this. I mean, I'm okay with it because it keeps anarchy from being the dominant way of the world, but sometimes it brings more harm onto people with on a few occasions hurting more people than they have saved. Naruto replied. That's just it, isn't saving lives what's important to people like Mako? Said Korra. Mako's a good guy. I bet he wants to help, but, you know what, screw it, I'm just talking crap that's not helping. Korra, in this world, even if people care for others, a community usually looks out for themselves. Naruto replied. As much as I want to punch you and say that it's not true, I have to admit that you're right. Korra replied. With tears still streaming from her eyes, Korra gazed into the water. You can still punch me if that'll make you smile, said Naruto. Korra couldn't contain her laughter at what Naruto had said. Are you some sort of masochist? Korra asked with a small smile. Naruto remarked, you aren't the first to ask that. Who was? Naruto said, my reflection. Korra laughed at that. Naruto grinned and said, glad I could make you smile. It helps that you're here, but you know you don't have to stay with me, Korra replied. Naruto grinned and said, Korra, if I didn't want to be here then people would think that you were talking to some sort of imaginary friend. Korra grinned back. I can't say much now, but I want you to know that even though we've only known each other for a few days, I'm glad that I got to meet you, Korra, and that you were my first friend. Naruto said. Naruto's kind words made Korra flush, but then she saw his final word choice. Your first friend? Didn't you make other friends when you were younger? Replied Korra. A few, but they ended on a bad note, and ever since then I've been afraid to make any more. Naruto said, looking into the water. Korra cast a worried, dejected glance at Naruto. Naruto blushed and looked down to the side, saying, ever since I met you for some reason I just wanted to follow, ya know? I don't know why, but I wanted this. Being next to you. When Korra heard Naruto's words, she blushed. Then Naruto turned to face her and spoke. Korra. I don't know about the rest, but I promise you that no matter what happens, I'll be by your side through all of T. Naruto was abruptly cut off when Korra pressed her lips to his. When Korra put her arms around Naruto's neck and he cupped her cheeks, Naruto's eyes widened in shock before closing. The kiss lasted for minutes, but it felt like hours. After that, they parted ways and met each other's gazes. Naruto began, does this mean? I'm unsure, Korra uttered. Shrugging his shoulders, Naruto remarked, works for me. Then, enjoying every moment of their kiss, Naruto and Korra locked lips once more. They kissed for a while before parting ways once more. Korra used her index finger to block Naruto's lips as he leaned in once more. Korra smiled and said, "Hold it, lover boy, I have to go." Naruto blushed and smiled slightly in embarrassment before responding, "Right." Naruto and Korra got up and made their way to the boat. After Korra jumped into the boat, she stopped Naruto as he was about to do the same. "Naruto, I think I should go to the Fire Nation alone," Korra replied. Naruto questioned, "Are you sure?" Korra confirmed with a nod. Naruto grinned and remarked, "Well, I don't like you being alone, but I'll respect my new girlfriend's wishes." Korra smirked and said, "You think that I'm your girlfriend?" Naruto smirked and leaned in closer to Korra, asking, "Oh, so does the water princess need a little convincing?" Korra grinned and said, "Just buy me some ramen when I get back and I'll think about it." Naruto stood up straight and said, "Deal." Then Korra and Naruto grinned at each other while looking directly into each other's eyes. Naruto said, "I'll see you when you get back." Korra turned on the engine and declared, "It's a date." After that, Korra left Naruto at the docks and drove off in the direction of the Fire Nation. When Naruto saw her ride off, he lost control of himself and leapt into the air, pumping his fist high into the air. Naruto began to break dance on the docks, cheering, "Yada! I got my dream girl." "Yes." Korra blushed and giggled when she heard him and saw his little dance. Korra looked straight ahead and said to herself, "I already can't wait to come back." At Varrick's film studio afterwards, as Naruto watched Varrick and his film crew wrap up a scene, he made his way back inside. Varrick was seated in his director's chair when Naruto approached him. Naruto asked his old friend Varrick, "Hey Varrick, how was the first day's shooting?" "Great!" Varrick shouted vigorously. It was then that Varrick saw Naruto's broad smile. Varrick smirked and said, "Oh, something good happened today?" Bullen walked over to them and asked, "Did something happen? How was Mako? Are he and Korra okay?" "Well, Number Fun Jr. is doing good, I think. But him and Korra are done," replied Naruto. "So Mako and Korra broke up? Aw man, that's too bad," Bullen replied. Varrick leaned back in his chair and rested his arm on top of it, asking, "So who ended it?" Naruto said, "Sir Tall, Dark and Brooding. And let me guess. You're so happy because you and the Avatar hit it off," exclaimed Varrick enthusiastically. "Well, I comforted her, then I said some things and then next thing I know, she puts her lips to mine and then we started making out, twice," said Naruto. "No," Bullen exclaimed in disbelief. "Well done, my boy," Varrick grinned and gave Naruto a backslap. "I have been planning out names for your future children. What do you think of Varrick Jr. for your first son?" Varrick replied with a grin. "Tempting, but I've always wanted to name my first son Shinichiku," Naruto replied. "Bamboo? Not as good as Varrick Jr., but future Uncle Varrick likes it," smiled Varrick. "Please let me be Uncle Bullen," Bullen pleaded on his knees. "Yeah, sure. I bet my son would love knowing his Uncle Bullen, Uncle Varrick, Aunt Asami, Aunt Zuli, and even Uncle Slappy," Naruto replied. With an eyebrow raised, Varrick questioned, "Uncle Slappy? Who's that?" Bullen asked, "Half-lidded, Mako?" Naruto grinned and said, "Mako." "Nice. It would be a grand achievement for a child to slap an uncle," Varrick replied. Naruto grinned and remarked, "You know my hopes for the future so well." However, his eyes widened as he saw a picture of Korra battling a malevolent spirit. Varrick exclaimed with pride, "Yes I do." But then he became aware that Naruto was breathing more heavily. Varrick said, "Hey kid, what's wrong?" When Naruto noticed Korra's eyes glowing while she attempted to encircle the dark spirit with golden water, he suddenly held his head. Bullen said, "Hey Naruto, are you okay?" Naruto began to perspire and his breathing became labored. Abruptly, he witnessed Korra unleash fire on the charging spirit, only for the spirit to crash into her before the two entered the water. After that, Naruto briefly stopped breathing before passing out on the ground. "Naruto!" Varrick yelled, "Get a medic here, stat!" Bullen knelt beside Naruto and took hold of his shoulders while giving him a gentle shake. Bolin called out to the blonde, Naruto, can you hear me? What happened? Wake up, man. But the blonde remained unconscious. Naruto. In a shadowy area when Naruto felt his ass get wet, he moaned. When Naruto opened his eyes, he saw a ceiling high in the sky. Naruto noticed he was in some sort of sewer when he turned to look to the side. Naruto sat up and rubbed the back of his head, asking, what the hell? A voice said, it's about time you finally came. When Naruto looked up, he saw a massive nine-tailed fox. Naruto exclaimed in disbelief, holy shit, I'm dead, aren't I? Kurama replied, no, Baka. Naruto asked, Baka, that's what I and, who the hell are you? The enormous fox remarked, let's just say I'm an old friend. Naruto questioned, are you by any chance Mamoru's father? Naruto glared as he assumed his airbending pose, saying, wait, what the am I saying? You're a giant fox with 9 tails with giant fangs. If you eat me, then you're going to have bad indigestion because I won't go down without a fight. I don't have time to play with you, Gaki, or is the life of your girlfriend not important to you? The fox responded. Naruto commanded, you know what happened to Korra? Tell me. The fox asked, what's the magic word? Naruto glared and said, fuck you. The fox glared and said, you're even a bigger pain in the ass than your original self. Original self? What the hell's that supposed to mean? Replied Naruto. Look, I don't have much time because I don't want to sit my ass here any longer, but your girlfriend is fine, but you need to go to the Southern Air Temple. Find that bald mama's boy Tenzin and learn the original ways of airbending from him. Korra will meet you there. The fox replied. Naruto questioned, how do you know all that, and who are you? As a bright light engulfed Naruto, the fox said, sorry, but that's all the time we have. Sayonara, Kit. In the film studio owned by Varrick. Wait. Naruto sat up and yelled. He turned to see that everyone in his immediate vicinity was terrified of him. Then Naruto looked at Varrick. Naruto said, Varrick, I need a ride. Varrick inquired, what kind of ride? At Varrick's yacht's summit. In the control room, Varrick, accompanied by Zhu Li and Naruto, with Mamoru perched on his head and Naruto clutching his duffel bag, pressed a button that caused a deck hatch to open and a hot air balloon to emerge. What better way for an airbender to travel than through the air, grinned Varrick. Naruto remarked, thanks, Varrick. Varrick grinned and said, anytime, kid. Just remember that I'll still be here waiting for you. Naruto replied, I know. Varrick surprised Naruto by hugging the blonde instead of shaking his hand, but the blonde grinned and gave him a hug in return. The two broke off their manly embrace. Now go find this mama's boy, learn how to be an even better airbender, and get your girl back. Varrick gave the order. Naruto saluted and said, yes sir, before sprinting down to the deck. From the window of the control room, Varrick and Zhu Li observed Naruto leap into the balloon's basket and ignite it. Fortunately, Naruto had a lot of maps, so once the balloon was in the air, he headed directly for the Southern Air Temple. With a smile and a tear in his eye, Varrick remarked, our boy is growing up, Zhu Li. Zhu Li smiled and said, he sure is, sir. She's always been fond of Naruto. In contrast to Varrick, he spoke to her like a regular person and wasn't among those who were frightened or uncomfortable around her. Varrick had a thought as he wiped away his tear. Zhu Li. Take a note. The day Naruto becomes famous, make action figures of him and Korra. The kids will just beg their parents to buy them, Varrick said. Zhu Li wrote the message on her notepad and replied, yes sir. Alongside Naruto's expression was determined as he gazed up at the sky. With just his foxy partner by his side, Naruto continued his journey, saying, I'll be there, Korra. I just hope you will too. Naruto took off in the direction of the Eastern Air Temple. Tenzin and his family had apparently left for the Eastern Air Temple by the time he arrived at the Southern Air Temple, which greatly irritated him. In addition, he was being pestered by excited questions from everyone who knew he was an airbender because of a letter that had been sent to his fellow airbenders. He was occupied with a book about the temple. He was somewhat intrigued, but his interest was piqued when he saw the temple's treasures. Am I really going to steal from a place that my ancestors considered spiritual and beauty divine? Naruto thought to himself. Naruto shrugged and said, new generation, different lifestyle. Then, in the distance, he saw what appeared to be the temple. Naruto put the book back in his duffel bag and remarked, show time, I guess. Mamoru was dozing off on the ground when Naruto noticed him. Naruto grinned and said, lazy little bastard. Eastern Air Temple is close by. To avoid being noticed, Naruto parked the blimp a short distance from the Air Temple. He chose to land slightly out of the people's line of sight because he was unsure of their reaction if they saw him land in front of them. He went up the mountain to the Eastern Air Temple after waking Mamoru so the fox kid could hide inside the bag. Temple of Eastern Air. After arriving at the temple, Naruto glanced around and noticed a few acolytes. Because he didn't want to be discovered and be inundated with inquiries from acolytes once more, Naruto made the decision to sneak around the temple. They would undoubtedly go crazy if there was another airbender that wasn't connected to Avatar Aang like the others were. Naruto made the decision to look around and check out the antiquated artifacts as he crept into the temple. In some of the rooms he investigated, Naruto was able to locate some antique jewelry and vases. As he continued to explore the temple, he borrowed some of the jewelry, assuming no one would use it. He kept going until he came to a door that stopped him cold and forced him to turn around. Then Naruto saw a name engraved on the door. Mito. Hold on a second. As he walked into the room, Naruto thought, this is my great-great-grandma's name. It appeared to be a typical room, but then he saw a book on a table. He reached for it and opened it to discover odd objects he had never seen or heard of before. Shinobi? Jutsu? Uzumaki? What on earth is this? Naruto wondered in his head, but then he saw a sketch of a necklace with a crystal gem on it. Hold on a second, isn't that right? After opening his duffel bag, Naruto reached inside and took out an object, which turned out to be the same necklace. Then, as he read the book, Naruto reached for it. The first Hokage's necklace. A Hokage. What is it? How come it sounds so familiar? Naruto pondered. After checking out more of the book, Naruto put the necklace in his pocket. However, he stopped when he noticed a drawing of the enormous nine-tailed fox he had seen in his Republic City dream. Kitsune no Kyubi. Nato gazed at the page, thinking, one of the beasts with 9 tails. Then, while gazing at the book's blank cover, Naruto closed it. This book might be helpful. If you think about it, it's also kind of my birthright, Naruto thought. Naruto looked up to see a dragonfly bunny spirit clutching the book from its mouth when something suddenly grabbed it. Naruto looked surprised at the spirit and exclaimed, what the hell? Then, with the book still in its mouth, the dragonfly bunny took off through the window of the room. Naruto yelled, hey, before grabbing his duffel bag and leaping out the window. Then, as he ran after the spirit, Naruto softened his fall with his airbending abilities. The acolytes saw Naruto pursuing what appeared to be a flying book as he pursued the spirit. Bumi, who now believed he saw everything, was one of them. As he headed to his family's location, Bumi remarked, oh, I can't wait to tell the others about this. Alongside Jinora in the garden, Jinora was playing with a few of her new dragonfly bunny spirit friends when one approached her holding a book. Jinora snatched the book out of the dragonfly bunny spirit's mouth and asked, what's this? When Jinora looked up and saw the airbender from Republic City, she gasped in surprise and said, it's my birthright. Naruto approached her and remarked, I'm guessing you can see the little guys too. Jinora blushed in his presence and merely nodded stupidly. Then, indicating that he wanted the book returned, Naruto held out his hand to her. After Jinora handed him his book, Naruto opened it to make sure the spirit hadn't ruined it, which was fortunately not the case. You're the airbender that my family heard about, Jinora replied. Naruto questioned, depends. Were there pictures that proved so? Jinora nodded in response. Closing the book, Naruto said, then yeah, that was me. Jinora looked at him in amazement and said, wow. Jinora questioned, so what are you doing here? Let's just say, you're not the only one who's encountered spirits by themselves, said Naruto. Tenzin and his family. As Tenzin and his family were enjoying some time together, Bumi unexpectedly entered. You guys won't believe what I had just seen. I just saw a flying book, Bumi exclaimed. Everyone merely gave him a blank stare. Really? Kya asked. With a smile that caused everyone to look shocked, Bumi said, yep. Oh, and I also saw that blonde airbender from Republic City chasing after it. Crazy day, huh? With Naruto and Jinora sitting on the grass and gazing at images of animals known as tailed beasts, Jinora remarked, I've never heard of spirits called tailed beasts. I don't even think my father ever heard of these spirits. Leaning against a pillar, Naruto remarked, I actually feel like I know them somehow, but I don't think I ever encounter anything relating to them before. Jinora inquired, so, are there any more airbenders out there? As Jinora listened intently, Naruto said, well, I guess I can spill from one airbender to another. Naruto smirked and remarked, yes. In fact, there are 4 other airbenders out there. I should know. I used to live with them.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.